Let go of my wrist, Vaelis. If you say my name again, she hissed, I will scream it so loudly that every camera in this tower drinks it like blood. A low laugh, too calm for the way the ballroom throbbed with music and money. You will not scream. You will smile. That is what Omegas do when they wear pearls paid for by my house. I am not your Omega. Not yet, he murmured, and his thumb brushed the inside of her wrist like a claim. The gesture was small, almost polite, but her stomach flipped with a familiar terror. The kind that came from being seen too clearly. Around them, the tower of black glass glittered with 1,000 reflections. A ceiling of smoked crystal held the city lights like trapped stars. The elite of Noctharrow floated between champagne and silent deals, clothed in velvet and status, their scents carefully masked by expensive suppressants. The air should have been cold and clean. It was not. Something inside Vaelis shivered and then broke. It started as a thin crack in her control, a tiny mistake in her breathing. The suppressant patch under her collarbone stung, then went numb. Her carefully layered masking perfume faltered. And then, like a curtain ripped open, her real scent spilled out. Warm, lunar. Sweet in the wrong way, the way that made heads turn before minds caught up. The way that made alphas go still, pupils widening as instincts rose like a tide. The nearest conversation died mid-sentence. A laugh stopped. A glass paused halfway to lips. Her fiancé inhaled sharply. His gaze snapped to her throat, to the pulse there, as if he could see it glowing. Oh, he whispered, close enough that the words brushed her skin. There you are. Vaelis locked her jaw until it ached. Her fingers curled around the clutch in her hand so hard the edge bit her palm. She could not let her face change. She could not let them know she was afraid. She had survived by being a perfect shadow, and shadows did not tremble. But the room trembled for her. She felt it, the shift in the crowd. Predators pretending to be patrons, deals turning into hunger. And beneath it all, the silent question passing between them like a blade. Whose Omega is that? Her fiancé stepped closer. His scent pushed against hers, a heavy, expensive cologne laced with alpha dominance, meant to soothe and command. It did neither. It only reminded her that he had bought a contract, not her consent. Now you do not leave, he said softly, not after showing them this. Vaelis smiled the way she had practiced in mirrors, a social smile, a harmless smile, a smile that kept teeth hidden. She lifted her chin and let her eyes go glassy as if she were simply flattered. Then the lights died. For half a heartbeat, the ballroom was blind. A scream cut through the dark. Assassin. Metal rang, not the soft clink of jewelry. The hard sound of steel meeting steel. A body hit a table. Someone cursed. Panic surged like a wave, and the crowd turned into a stampede of silk and sharp elbows. Vaelis dropped under the banquet table as if she had been trained for it, because she had. Her knees hit marble. Her hair caught on something and tore free of its pins. The veil she wore for the ceremony snagged and ripped, leaving a strip of lace in her hand like shed skin. Under the table, everything was feet and shadows. Perfume spilled. Wine splashed. Someone fell and crawled away sobbing. Vaelis pressed her palm to her mouth and listened. The fight was close, too close. She heard her fiancé bark orders, his voice furious, not frightened. She heard a second voice, sharp and unfamiliar, speaking a word that made the air vibrate, a rune seal maybe. Then the sound of something shattering overhead. Glass, the ceiling, or one of the hanging sculptures. It rained down like frozen rain, tinkling as it hit the floor. Vaelis looked up through the chaos and understood, with a cold clarity that cut through her panic. They were not aiming for her fiancé. They were hunting her. She crawled backward, finding the gap between tables, and slid out into a corridor where the music had become a muffled thud. The emergency lights flickered red. A siren began to wail somewhere deep in the tower, but it sounded distant, like an afterthought. Her scent followed her, a panic trail she could almost see. Her suppressant patch burned uselessly. She ripped it off and crushed it in her fist, hating the way her own body betrayed her. Hating the way her heat cycle, suppressed and managed, could still be triggered by stress. Footsteps. Fast, too disciplined to be partygoers. Vaelis ran. She flew down a corridor lined with black mirrors that reflected her in fragments. A woman in silver, a pretty face, a hollow smile gone, a secret bleeding out in the open. She caught sight of her own eyes, wide and too bright, and for a second she saw the little girl she had once been, hidden in a cellar with a hand over her mouth while men argued about her value. Never again, she told herself, breath ripping through her lungs. Never again. A door ahead slammed open. A figure filled the frame, tall and still, as if he had been waiting for her sprinting heart. His eyes glowed pale in the emergency light, not human, not entirely. Moon ice. The kind of gaze that did not need darkness to see. Vaelis skidded to a stop, turning to bolt another way, but the corridor behind her filled with masked hunters. They wore matte black, their scents scrubbed nearly to nothing. No clan mark, no house insignia, only purpose. The man in the doorway moved between her and them in one smooth step. He did not raise a weapon. He raised his hand. A symbol flared in the air, bright as a brand. The walls shuddered. Pressure hit Vaelis like a sudden storm, not physical, but something older. Magic, rune work. The hunters stopped hard, as if an invisible chain had yanked them back. The man spoke one word, mate. Vaelis felt it in her bones. The syllable was not a plea. It was a claim shaped like fate, and her body answered with a traitorous pull. Her knees nearly buckled. She caught herself against the wall, teeth gritted, rage flaring hot to cover the fear. "No," she spat. "You do not get to say that to me." His gaze flicked to her throat, to where her pulse hammered. There was restraint in him, a tight leash on instinct that made him more dangerous, not less. "You are bleeding sent into a tower full of alphas," he said. "If you run alone, they will tear you apart before you reach the elevator. Then let them," Vaelis snapped, "because at least it will be my choice." The hunters surged again, testing the seal. The symbol in the air pulsed. The corridor lights flickered. A blade flashed from the crowd. It cut through the air toward Vaelis, a clean line meant for her heart. The man moved, not fast, certain. His arm snapped up and the blade bounced as if it had hit stone. The rune seal flared bright enough to paint the corridor white. The hunters recoiled, hissing like animals. Vaelis stared at the man, chest heaving. "Who are you?" He did not answer the way she expected, not with a name, not with a title. He leaned in just enough that his breath touched her cheek and his voice dropped. "Thyren." The name struck something in her memory like a gong. A rumor, a warning whispered in alleys. A prime alpha who did not play by the city rules. A leader who built a fortress academy for shifters and called it sanctuary, while the city called it a threat. Vaelis pushed past him. He let her. That should have terrified her more than any chase. She ran down the stairwell, heels in her hand now, bare feet slapping cold stone. Her dress snagged on the railing and tore. She welcomed the pain. It made her feel real, not like a doll in a contract. On the next landing, someone landed in front of her with a soft thud. Not heavy like Thyren, lighter, quicker. A thin man, sharp cheekbones, a smile like a knife. His eyes glittered with something wild. Shifter, Vaelis realized, and not one she recognized. He lifted his hands, palms open, as if to show he was unarmed. "If you keep running like that, you will die," he said. "And if you die, I do not get paid." Vaelis paused, breath ragged. "Paid by who?" He tossed a dark cloak at her. "Catch." She caught it on instinct. The fabric was warm, lined with something that held scent shielding. "Why are you helping me?" she demanded. He tilted his head. "Because I am not done with you yet. That is not an answer." He grinned wider, then leaned in with sudden seriousness. "They hired me to deliver you. Alive. Preferably unbroken. But the people chasing you are not the ones who signed my contract. And I hate when the wrong hands touch my merchandise." Vaelis flinched at the word merchandise, and he seemed to enjoy it like he wanted her sharp. "Names," she said. "Now, Oryx," he replied as if offering a joke. "Put the cloak on. Your scent is screaming." Vaelis threw the cloak around her shoulders, fastening it with shaking fingers. The moment it closed, the air around her changed, muffling her Omega signature like a hand over a flame. Relief hit her so hard she almost cried. Oryx glanced past her up the stairs. He clicked his tongue. "Prime Boy is coming." "Do not call him that," Vaelis said, not sure why the defense came out. Oryx laughed. "Oh, so he has already impressed you. Fine. Your ice-eyed savior is coming, and the masked ones are splitting to flank. If you want out, roof." "Roof," Vaelis repeated, mind racing. There was a glider pad. Oryx nodded, then darted past her, moving up the stairs like he belonged there. He did not beckon. He assumed she would follow. Vaelis did. Because in Noctharrow, survival often meant choosing the least poisonous hand in the dark. They burst through the roof access door into wind and red emergency lights. The night was cold, the city sprawling below like a jagged sea of neon and shadow. 2 towers of black glass rose side by side, connected by a narrow bridge walkway. The glider on the pad was already burning. Flames licked the sleek metal frame. Someone had sabotaged it. Smoke poured into the sky like a signal. Vaelis stopped dead. A laugh, broken and hysterical, rose in her throat. "Of course," she whispered. Oryx grabbed her elbow. No time. Hunters poured onto the roof behind them, masks glinting. One raised a rune-etched crossbow. Another held a chain that hummed with enchantment, meant to bind shifters, meant to bind Omegas. Vaelis felt her skin crawl. Thyren stepped onto the roof access threshold, calm amid chaos. His gaze swept the scene once, and something in the air tightened. The hunters hesitated, as if the night itself had just noticed him. Vaelis stared at him, heart hammering. Prime, her mind supplied, a word that meant more than alpha. Prime meant the kind of dominance that could bend a room without a single touch. The kind that made lesser predators step aside because their instincts recognized a king. Thyren met her eyes across the roof, and his expression shifted. Not hunger, not triumph. Something almost like grief, as if seeing her here confirmed a nightmare he had feared. "Go," he said, voice carrying through the wind. "Go where?" Vaelis screamed back. He looked at the burning glider, then at the bridge walkway connecting to the other tower. "Jump." Vaelis barked a laugh. "You are insane." Oryx pulled her closer. "He is right. If you stay, they net you. If you jump, you maybe live. Maybe." "That is the best Noctharrow offers," Oryx said lightly, then pushed her toward the edge. Vaelis stumbled, toes at the lip of the roof. The drop was dizzying. The bridge walkway was narrow, slick with rain, a strip of steel and glass between towers. A bolt whistled past her ear and cracked into the wall. She felt the heat of it. Her body decided before her mind did. Vaelis ran and jumped. For one breathless second, she was weightless over the void, the city yawning beneath her. Then her fingers caught the edge of the bridge railing, pain exploding up her arms. She swung hard, legs flailing, and hauled herself up with a guttural sound that did not belong to a woman in silk. She crawled onto the bridge, dress shredded, hair wild under the cloak, and forced herself to stand. Behind her, the roof erupted into violence. Shouts, rune light, the roar of a beast, glass shattering. Vaelis did not look back. She ran across the bridge into the second tower and down the emergency stairwell until her lungs burned and her legs shook. The tower's lower levels were quieter. Its gala guests kept away from the panic above. She slipped out through a service door into an alley where the smell of rain and iron clung to old stone. Noctharrow embraced her with its familiar cruelty. The city was built like a bargain. High towers for those who sold souls. Low streets for those who bought scraps. Everything had a price, even silence. Vaelis pulled the hood up and moved fast, blending into the late-night foot traffic. She kept her head down, listening for pursuit, watching reflections. The cloak dulled her scent, but fear was its own beacon. A memory surfaced, sharp as broken glass. Her name is Vaelis, a voice had once whispered. No one must know it. Names are handles, and you are too easy to carry away. She had lived as someone else ever since. Tonight, the old name returned to her like a curse. At the end of the alley, 3 figures stepped out of the shadows. They wore street coats with subtle stitching. Pack marks. Not hunters in blank masks. These were loyal to someone, and that made them worse. One was broad-shouldered, wolf-shifter by scent. One had cat eyes, narrow and amused. The third was a woman with a shaved head and hands that flexed like she itched to fight. Vaelis stopped, heart punching her ribs. She could turn, but her instincts screamed that the alley behind her was watched too. The broad-shouldered one smiled. There she is. Vaelis raised her chin. Move. The woman clicked her tongue. Pretty Omega voice. Shame we have to drag you. I am not an Omega, Vaelis lied, because lying had kept her alive. The cat-eyed one leaned in, inhaling. Oh, sweetheart, your cloak is good, but it is not perfect. Vaelis shifted her weight, ready to run. She could not outrun 3. A pressure swept through the alley, sudden and heavy. The air turned sharp like winter. Thyren stepped into view from the mouth of the alley as if he had always been there. His coat was dark, his hair damp with rain, his eyes pale and luminous. On his knuckles, faint rune marks glowed and then faded. He did not look at Vaelis at first. He looked at the 3 pack-marked shifters. Leave, he said. They froze. The wolf shifter swallowed. Prime. Thyren did not repeat himself, he simply waited. One by one, the 3 backed away, their eyes down, not a protest, not a threat, pure submission. Vaelis watched, stunned. When they were gone, Thyren finally faced her. You are hurt, he said. I am alive, Vaelis snapped. That is not the same thing. Thyren's gaze dropped to the torn edge of her dress, the scrape on her palm, the tremor in her fingers. Something in his expression tightened, as if he blamed himself. You should not have been in that tower, he said. Vaelis barked a bitter laugh. I was invited, I was on display. I was being sold with a ring and a smile. His jaw flexed. The contract. She stiffened. How do you know about the contract? Because the people who wrote it are terrified of you, Thyren said quietly. And terrified people do ugly things. Vaelis's throat went dry. My fiancé is terrified of me. Not your fiancé, Thyren corrected. The house that claims you. Your scent breaking tonight did not create danger. It revealed it. Vaelis hugged the cloak tighter around her. She hated that her body had been a signal flare. She hated that every alpha who had paused in that ballroom had calculated what she was worth. Thyren took a single step closer and stopped, as if he were measuring distance with care. Come with me, he said. Under my protection, you live. Vaelis's laugh came out thin. Protection is just a prettier word for cage. Not with me. You are a prime alpha, Vaelis said, voice rising. Your protection is instinct wrapped in law. You say mate and the world expects me to kneel. Thyren held her gaze without flinching. I will not touch you without your consent. I will not mark you. I will not bind you. But I cannot keep you safe if you keep running blind through Noctharrow. Consent. The word hit her like a shock. Alphas said many things, but they rarely said that. Vaelis wanted to believe him. Wanting was dangerous. A flicker of light flared on the alley wall behind her, like a hologram igniting. Vaelis turned sharply. A symbol burned on the stone, projected from a drone overhead. A bounty notice, crisp and official, hovering in the rain. Her breath caught. Hunt declared. Omega of interest. Capture alive. Reward authorized. At the bottom, a seal stamped in black. The Sable Regent. Vaelis's knees almost gave out. The Sable Regent was not a person you argued with, not a crime lord you could bribe. The Regent was a myth that had become policy, a ruler in shadow whose reach went into courts and slums alike. People disappeared under his seal and were never seen again, except as whispers. Her fiancé had been a trap. The masked hunters had been a net. Tonight had never been about a marriage. It had been about delivering her to something that ruled the city from the dark. Thyren's voice was low and controlled. That seal should not be on the street. He is moving openly. Vaelis swallowed hard. Why me? Thyren's eyes softened just slightly. Because you are not just an Omega. You are a secret someone buried and forgot to chain properly. Vaelis flinched. Do not pretend you know me. I know enough, he said. The Sable Regent hunts keys. Omegas with rare resonance. Bloodlines that unlock old doors. He thinks you are one of them. Vaelis's mouth tasted like metal. He thinks. Thyren looked toward the street, listening. They will come in minutes. Vaelis made herself breathe, in and out, in and out. Panic was a luxury. Fine, she said, I will go with you. Thyren did not move, he waited. But Vaelis continued, voice hard, I do not belong to you. I do not sign anything. I do not accept a bond. I am not a prize you rescue so you can keep. Thyren nodded once, solemn as an oath. Agreed. Vaelis lifted her chin. And if you lie, then you leave, he said, even if it breaks me. The honesty in his tone made her skin prickle. She hated that a part of her believed him. She hated the ache that followed, a soft pull beneath her ribs that felt like the beginning of a bond she had never asked for. Thyren turned and led her through side streets. He moved like he knew every camera angle, every blind spot. Vaelis followed, forcing her steps to match his pace, refusing to look like she depended on him. Rain fell in fine needles. The city smelled of wet stone and old smoke. After 10 minutes, they reached an underground entrance hidden behind a shuttered storefront. Thyren pressed his palm to a panel. Rune light pulsed, then the wall slid aside with a whisper. A tunnel swallowed them. Vaelis's pulse steadied a fraction in the darkness. The tunnel was dry and lined with old brick. Faint rune marks glimmered along the archway, wards that muted sound and scent. Whoever built this had planned for sieges. How far? Vaelis asked. Far enough, Thyren said. They walked. The tunnel sloped downward, then leveled out. At times, Vaelis felt as if the air itself shifted, as if they crossed unseen thresholds. Her skin tingled at each ward line. It made her think of invisible cages. Do you keep prisoners? She asked suddenly. Thyren's steps did not falter. We keep predators who hunt Omegas. That is not an answer. He glanced back at her, eyes pale in the dim light. It is the only answer you get right now. Vaelis's anger rose, but she swallowed it. She needed facts more than pride. At last, the tunnel ended in a heavy door of dark metal etched with runes. Thyren spoke a word. The runes responded, unfolding like a flower. The door opened soundlessly. Beyond it was a vast chamber lit by soft, floating lights. Stone walls arched high overhead. This was not a sewer hideout. It was a fortress carved into the bones of the earth, elegant and ruthless. A place built to endure. Astrium Enclave, Thyren said, as if naming it made it real for her. Vaelis stepped inside, boots echoing on smooth stone. The air here smelled of cedar and steel, and beneath it the layered sense of shifters living in close quarters. Wolves, cats, birds, things older, stranger, all masked by discipline and wards. A figure approached, tall and broad, his posture like a shield. His hair was dark, his eyes steady. He carried himself like someone who had never panicked in his life. Kaler, Thyren said. Kaler's gaze went to Vaelis, quick and assessing. He did not smile. Prime, you brought her here. Thyren nodded. She had no other option. Kaler's jaw tightened. That means we just inherited a war. Another figure stepped out of the shadows, a woman with hair like ink and eyes like a night animal. Her movements were smooth and silent. She looked Vaelis up and down as if reading her like a file. Myrth, Thyren said. Myrth's voice was quiet, dangerous. No one comes to Astrium by accident. A third presence made Vaelis glance up. A man with wings folded tight behind him stood on a balcony above, perched like a predator. His feathers were dark, his gaze sharp. He watched Vaelis as if he could see her heartbeat. Nyxel, Thyren said. Nyxel's mouth curved. The city sends us a gift wrapped in panic. Vaelis's hands curled into fists. I am not a gift. A fourth stepped forward, older than the others, with silver threaded through dark hair. His eyes held the calm of rituals and disasters. He carried a staff etched with runes. Sauron, Thyren said. Sauron studied Vaelis with a healer's patience. She is marked. Vaelis instinctively hid her left hand in the cloak. The mark had not appeared yet, not visibly, but her palm still tingled from the crushed suppressant patch and the scrape from the roof. She felt exposed under Sauron's gaze anyway. Thyren lifted a hand, signaling for space. She is here temporarily, he said, before Vaelis could speak. Under my code. Kalar exhaled through his nose. Your code is the only reason the Council has not torn you apart already. Council, Vaelis repeated. Myrth's eyes gleamed. The Council is not what you think. Nyxel spread his wings slightly, then folded them again, amused. We are not a single alpha with obedient shadows, if that is what scares you. It does, Vaelis said frankly. Sauron's expression softened. Then be afraid. Fear keeps you alive. Thyren looked at Vaelis. You wanted terms. Speak them. Vaelis forced herself to stand straighter, even though exhaustion trembled through her legs. I stay until I can disappear, she said. I will not be locked in a room. I will not be handled. No marks, no heat manipulation, no forced suppressants. Nyxel's brows rose. That is a list. Good, Vaelis said. I like lists. They stop people from pretending they did not hear. Kalar nodded slowly. Reasonable. Myrth's gaze sharpened. And what do we get? Vaelis met her eyes. You get a problem that will not die quietly. I saw the Sable Regent's seal on my bounty. That is bigger than me. If he is hunting openly, he will come for anyone who shelters me. You get to decide if you want to be brave or smart or both. Silence settled, thick as smoke. Thyren spoke into it. She stays, under my protection. No one touches her. No one corners her. If your instincts slip, you answer to me. Nyxel's smile faded. Prime, your instincts are not the only ones that matter. Thyren's eyes flashed. That is why I am sealing my wing tonight. Vaelis blinked. Wing. Myrth's lips curved. He means his quarters. Kalar added quietly, he means he will lock himself in with you so the others cannot break in if your scent spikes again. Vaelis stiffened. Absolutely not. Thyren's voice was calm. It is not for pleasure. It is containment. You are exhausted, your suppressant is gone, your control is frayed. If your Omega scent blooms here, the wards will hold, but bodies are weaker than wards. Vaelis felt her cheeks heat, anger and embarrassment twisting together. I can handle myself. Myrth's eyes narrowed. You almost got captured in a tower full of cameras. Vaelis flinched. Thyren stepped closer, stopping just outside the space that felt too intimate. His scent, cold and clean like snow on stone, brushed her senses. It was powerful, yes, but it was not aggressive. It did not shove. It waited. Let us keep you alive long enough for you to hate us properly later, he said. The phrase was so absurdly gentle that Vaelis' throat tightened. She looked away, blinking hard, furious that her eyes burned. Fine, she whispered, for tonight. Kalar pointed down a corridor. There is a screening at the ward gate. Arcane verification. If the regent is involved, we cannot risk a mimic. Vaelis' stomach dropped. Verification would pierce masks, would expose what she truly was. She followed anyway, because refusal was just another way to die. They entered a smaller chamber where runes were carved into the floor like an intricate map. Sauron motioned for Vaelis to stand at the center. Hold out your hands, he said. Vaelis hesitated, then did it. Her fingers shook. Sauron began to chant softly, words that felt like water poured over stone. The runes on the floor glowed, crawling upward like light seeking her skin. Vaelis held her breath as the magic brushed her. It did not hurt, it searched. Her cloak warmed, fighting the spell. For a moment, the masking held, and relief loosened her shoulders. Then the rune light pulsed, sharper. Vaelis' chest tightened. Her Omega scent strained against the cloak like a storm behind a door. The suppressant absence made her body raw, too responsive. She tried to steady her breathing the way she had learned, slow and controlled. The rune light touched something inside her and recoiled, as if startled. Nyxel leaned forward from the edge of the circle. Interesting, Soren's chant faltered. The spell did not fail, but it changed, shifting to accommodate something it had not expected. Vaelis' vision blurred for a second. A thread of sensation tugged at her, not from Thyren alone, but from all of them. A resonance, like a string plucked and answered by other strings in the same room. Her breath hitched. Myrth's eyes widened a fraction, her usual stillness cracking. That is not normal. Kaler's gaze sharpened. How many connections? Nyxel whispered, almost to himself, that is impossible unless she is. Vaelis snapped, stop. The rune light surged again, and her scent broke through the cloak in a sudden, involuntary wave. The chamber changed instantly. It was not a riot, not a mindless rush. It was worse. Every alpha in the room went rigid, muscles locking as instincts hit like lightning. Myrth's pupils blew wide, her breathing slowing to something predatory. Nyxel's wings flared, feathers bristling. Kaler's hands clenched, jaw tight. Even Soren, calm as stone, swallowed hard. Thyren moved first. He stepped behind Vaelis, not touching her, but placing himself like a wall. His voice dropped into a tone that scraped the air, prime dominance sharpened into command. Enough. The word hit the room and forced their bodies to remember discipline. Nyxel's wings lowered. Kaler exhaled slowly through his nose. Myrth's gaze stayed dangerous, but she did not move. Thyren lifted his hand and spoke another rune word. The door seals flared, locking the chamber from the outside. A second seal rose like a translucent barrier, muffling Vaelis' scent, compressing it back toward her skin. Vaelis trembled, humiliation and fear twisting together. I did not mean, she started. Thyren's voice was softer now, aimed only at her. Breathe. She tried. Her lungs stuttered. Thyren did not touch her, but his presence was close enough that she felt heat at her back. His scent wrapped around the sharp edge of her panic like a blanket, grounding without claiming. It made her body ache with a need she hated, a need for safety that tasted too much like surrender. Soren cleared his throat, voice controlled. The verification confirms she is not a mimic, but it also confirms she carries something. Old, the resonance is real. Kaler looked at Thyren. If the regent knows, he will not stop at hunters and contracts. Myrth's gaze flicked to Vaelis' hands. Show your palm. Vaelis froze. Why? Because I can smell ink under your skin, Myrth said quietly. Shadow ink. Vaelis' heart stumbled. She slowly turned her left hand over. A mark had appeared while the runes searched her. A black sigil, delicate as a crown, pulsed faintly in time with her heartbeat. It was not paint. It was not a bruise. It was a brand made of vow and shadow. Vaelis swallowed hard. When did he? Nyxel's voice sharpened. That is the regent. He is watching through it. As if summoned, the lights in the chamber flickered. The air cooled. The rune barrier shimmered. Vaelis' reflection in the polished wall across from her rippled like disturbed water. A shadow formed inside the reflection. Not her own, taller. Wearing the outline of a crown that was more concept than metal. Two eyes like dark lanterns focused on Vaelis through the glass. Her blood went cold. The shadow spoke, and the voice did not come from the wall. It came from inside Vaelis' skull, intimate as breath. Return, Vaelis, or your blood will open the gates. Vaelis stumbled back, slamming into Thyren's chest. She felt his arms lift slightly, still not touching, as if he fought his own instinct to catch her too tightly. I am not yours, she whispered. The shadow in the reflection seemed to smile without a mouth. You were made to be a key. Vaelis' vision flashed. For a heartbeat she saw something else, a place with a stone sky, doors sealed with blood, and her own hand pressed to the lock. Gasped, ripping her gaze away from the reflection. Thyren spoke a rune word like a knife. The reflection shattered, the polished surface cracking spiderweb wide. The shadow vanished. Vaelis stared at the broken wall, breathing hard. Her left palm burned. Kaler swore under his breath. He has reached into the enclave. Soren's eyes were grim. The mark is anchored in her. Removing it will be a ritual, dangerous. Vaelis's voice came out raw. Do it. Myrth tilted her head. You do not even ask what it costs. Vaelis looked at her, eyes bright with fury. I have paid costs my whole life. I am tired of being polite about it. Thyren's gaze held hers steady. The ritual will strain your control. It may trigger your scent again. It may trigger other responses. Vaelis forced her chin up, better than being a leash. Nyxel's wings shifted, restless. And if the regent pulls on the mark during the ritual, it could drag her mind straight into his hands. Vaelis's stomach clenched, but she did not back down. Then do it fast. Do it smart. Do it with your strongest wards. Unless your sanctuary is just a story you tell yourselves. The words landed. Myrth's eyes narrowed, then softened by a fraction as if she respected the bite. Kaler nodded once. We prepare the circle. Soren lifted his staff. We will need blood, but minimal. A cut, nothing more. A line to rewrite the vow, if she agrees. Vaelis's fingers curled. I agree. Thyren's voice was low. And if you want to stop at any moment, you say so. Even if the ritual fails. Vaelis stared at him. Why are you like this? Pain flickered across Thyren's face, quick and hidden, because I know what it is to be chained. Vaelis's gaze dropped before she could stop herself, to his wrist where his sleeve had shifted back slightly. There was an old scar there, pale and ridged, like the memory of a shackle. She swallowed. The sight made something in her chest twist, a fragile thread of understanding she did not want. A door creaked somewhere beyond the sealed chamber. Footsteps approached and then stopped, as if someone waited for permission to enter. Thyren spoke without turning. Oryx, show yourself. A laugh came from the corridor. You always ruin my dramatic entrances. The seals parted just enough, and Oryx slipped into the chamber like smoke. His clothes were damp, his grin too bright for the tension in the air. He looked at the broken reflection wall and whistled. Oh, you are already making friends with the regent. Ambitious. Vaelis glared. You left me on the bridge. Oryx spread his hands. You did not die. That means I did my job. Kaler's voice hardened. Report. Oryx's grin faded into something sharper. They are selling her. Silence hit like a punch. Vaelis felt her stomach drop. Selling me where? Oryx leaned forward, eyes gleaming with the thrill of danger. Underground auction. Not the polite kind with invitations. The kind where they chain Omegas to a stage and let monsters bid with ancient coins. It is scheduled at dawn. Myrth's voice went flat. That soon, Nyxel hissed. The regent moves faster than rumors. Thyren's eyes turned colder. Who is running it? Oryx shrugged, many hands, but the invitation list has a familiar name. Vaelis's throat tightened. My fiancé. Oryx nodded, the fake groom. He is the opening bidder. He thinks he owns her already by contract. Vaelis's hands shook with rage. He forged it. Kaler looked at Thyren. This is a trap. Thyren's jaw flexed. Everything is a trap now. Soren's gaze went to Vaelis's marked palm. If we remove the mark before dawn, the regent may lose his direct line to her. But the ritual will weaken her. Vaelis swallowed hard. And if you do not remove it, Nyxel answered, voice grim, then he can pull you out of any room like a hook through flesh. Vaelis's breath hitched. She forced her spine straight. Then we remove it, she said, tonight. Myrth stepped closer, her presence quiet but intense. If you scent bloom during the ritual again, you will need control. Not just suppressant. Control. Vaelis laughed bitterly. I have been controlling my body since I was 13. Myrth's eyes held hers, and for a heartbeat Vaelis saw something like recognition there, a shared history of being shaped by violence. Control is not just denial, Myrth said softly. It is knowing where your panic hides and dragging it into the light. Vaelis swallowed. The words felt uncomfortably true. Thyren looked around the circle. We do not wait for dawn. We do not let them put her on a stage. Kaler nodded. We go first. Nyxel's wings flared slightly. We make the auction our trap. Oryx's grin returned, but it did not reach his eyes. Finally, something fun. Vaelis stared at them, heart pounding, caught between suspicion and something dangerously close to hope. They spoke like a unit, like a pack that had decided together. A pack that included her, at least for this night. She hated how much she wanted to believe she mattered to them. "I am not bait," Vaelis said, voice sharp. Thyren's gaze snapped to her steady. "You are not a thing, but you can be the hook if you choose, on your rules." Vaelis's marked palm throbbed as if the regent heard her defiance and laughed. A hook, a key, a prize, a problem. For the first time in years, Vaelis let herself imagine another word. Weapon. She lifted her chin. "Fine." Oryx blinked. "Fine what?" Vaelis looked at Thyren. "I will walk into your trap. I will stand on their stage if I have to. But I want 2 promises." Thyren did not interrupt. He waited as if he truly meant consent. "First," Vaelis said, "if I say stop, you stop, even if it ruins your plan." Thyren nodded, agreed. "Second," Vaelis continued, "you do not mark me in the chaos. Not to save me, not to claim me, not to prove something to the room. If you need to dominate the city, do it with your name, not my skin." The air tightened. Even Nyxel went still. Myrth's gaze sharpened, measuring Thyren's reaction. Thyren's voice was low. "Agreed." Vaelis exhaled, shaky. "Then do your ritual. Rip this shadow out of me." Sorin lifted his staff again. "We prepare in the inner circle, stronger wards, no mirrors." Kaler gestured toward a corridor. "Myrth with me. Nyxel, watch the perimeter. Oryx, give me the invitation coordinates and every name you stole." Oryx put a hand over his chest, offended. "Stole. I prefer collected." Thyren stayed beside Vaelis as the others moved with practiced urgency. "You should rest," he said quietly. Vaelis laughed once, harsh. "Rest. While my name is on a bounty seal." Thyren's gaze softened, then at least breathe. "You cannot fight the regent if your own body becomes his lever." Vaelis looked down at her marked palm. The sigil pulsed. "I did not even know I could be hunted like this," she whispered. "I did everything right. I hid, I smiled, I obeyed." Thyren's voice was rough, controlled. "That is why they chose you, because you survived." Vaelis's eyes stung. She forced them dry. "Thyren," she said, testing his name like a blade, "if this is a cage, I will break it." He met her gaze. "Then I will help you break it, even if the shards cut me." The sincerity was a shock. It made Vaelis's chest ache, a painful warmth she did not trust. From somewhere deeper in the enclave, a low bell sounded. Not an alarm, but a signal. Wards engaging. The fortress tightening its grip around them. Vaelis followed Thyren down the corridor toward the inner circle, her footsteps echoing on stone. The air ahead felt charged, thick with rune magic and coming violence. Somewhere in the city above, the Sable Regent was arranging chains and candles for an auction at dawn. And somewhere inside Vaelis's blood, an old door waited, listening for her to open it. She curled her marked hand into a fist. Let them build their stage, she thought. Let them invite their monsters. Tonight, she would learn what it felt like to be the thing that hunts back. "Do it now," Vaelis said, and hated that her voice shook on the last word. "Before I change my mind." Sorin did not move like a man rushing to please. He moved like a man measuring how much blood a mistake would cost. "If you want the mark loosened, you will have to let us look at what it is anchored to. That means letting the wards brush your core. It will feel intimate, not in the way you fear, but in the way you cannot pretend it is not happening." "Then do not pretend," Vaelis snapped. "Tell me what to do." Thyren stood close enough that the warmth of him reached her through the cloak, far enough that she could still breathe. He had kept every promise so far in a way that made her suspicious of her own relief. "You do not have to prove anything," he said. "I have been proving I deserve to live since I was a child," Vaelis said. "I am tired of being brave quietly." Kaler turned away as if to give her space, but his shoulders stayed squared like a wall. "We will tighten the enclave wards. Nyxel will put watchers on every surface mirror, glass, and polished stone. If the regent uses reflections, we starve him. Nyxel's laugh was a thin blade. I will peel the shine off this place if I have to. Myrth's gaze stayed on Vaelis, calm and unblinking. First, you eat. Then you breathe. Then you train your scent to obey you again. You are not walking into dawn half-starved and shaking. I am not training, Vaelis said automatically, because the word tasted like cages and obedience. Myrth took one step closer, and the air shifted. Not dominance, something colder. A certainty that did not need volume. You are learning to survive inside your own skin. That is not obedience, that is revenge. The last word struck deeper than Vaelis wanted to admit. They led her through the enclave corridors, past doors carved with runes that hummed softly under her feet. The fortress felt alive, not with comfort, but with vigilance. There were shadows in every corner, but they were controlled shadows, disciplined like soldiers. Vaelis tried to keep her face neutral, even as her eyes drank in everything, mapping exits, counting guards, measuring threats. A wide archway opened into a training court. High stone walls rose around it. Torches burned with rune light that did not smoke. The ground was packed sand marked by countless footprints and claw gouges. Along one wall stood heavy iron bars, not decorative, not symbolic. Actual cages. Vaelis stopped. Her heartbeat picked up, the cloak suddenly too tight around her shoulders. So you do keep prisoners. Thyren's eyes slid to the cages, and something in him hardened. We keep hunters. Hunters are people, Vaelis said. People who once thought they were right. Thyren's voice stayed level. People who hunted omegas like animals. Myrth's expression did not change, but her hands flexed once, as if remembering the shape of a throat. Most of them would not survive the city courts. They vanish. Here, they face what they did. Vaelis stepped closer to the bars, drawn by the strange, sick need to see. Inside one of the cages crouched a man with bruised cheekbones and a split lip. His mask lay on the sand near his knees like discarded skin. He lifted his head slowly. His scent was wrong, not alpha, not beta, not omega. Scrubbed so aggressively it felt hollow, like a mouth washed of all taste. His eyes, though, were sharp and human. He stared at Vaelis with a focus that made her spine tighten. Then he spoke, and his voice was a whisper that slid under her bones. Vaelis. Her breath stopped. No one in this fortress should have known her name. Not her hidden name, not the one she had buried so deep she sometimes forgot it was hers. Thyren moved instantly, stepping between Vaelis and the cage, blocking her line of sight. Do not speak to her. The caged man smiled faintly, as if Thyren's protection amused him. You can lock me behind iron and runes, Prime, but you cannot lock a name back inside a mouth once it has been learned. Vaelis forced herself to move, to step around Thyren's shoulder just enough to see the man's face again. Her hands were shaking, and she hated it. How do you know that name? The man's smile vanished. For a moment, something like grief flickered in his eyes. I knew a girl in a cellar. I heard men arguing about her blood. I heard them say that if the key grows a spine, you cut it. If the key grows a voice, you take it. Vaelis tasted iron. Her mind flashed with the memory of damp stone, a hand over her mouth, the smell of rot and candle smoke. She forced it down, but it left a tremor behind. Who paid you? She asked, voice tight. My fiancé, the regent, someone else. The man's gaze slid to her palm beneath the cloak, as if he could see the mark through fabric. It does not matter who holds the chain. The chain always leads to the same door. Soren's voice came from behind them, calm like a ritual bell. Enough, he is baiting you, do not feed him. Vaelis swallowed hard. He said I am a key. Thyren's posture went rigid, but his voice stayed controlled. That word has been used to excuse cruelty for a long time. Kaler's gaze narrowed on the caged man. What door? The hunter chuckled softly. The Gloam Vault. The name fell into the court like a stone dropped into water. The air seemed to tighten around it. Nyxel's wings shifted with a faint whisper of feathers. That is a myth. All prisons start as myths, the hunter replied. so people will walk past them without seeing the bars. Vaelis felt the mark on her palm pulse, even though she had not looked at it. Her body reacted like the word had tugged a string inside her. She hated that, hated how her blood seemed to recognize a place she had never seen. Thyren stepped closer to the bars, voice low. "Who sent you tonight?" The hunter's eyes gleamed with a kind of devotion that made Vaelis nauseous. "The regent did not send me. He does not waste hands on errands. He sent hunger. He sent the emptiness. He sent the hollowbound." Soren's face tightened. "Stop." The hunter leaned forward until his forehead touched the bars. "You think you can cut the mark off and be free, little key. But freedom is a story told by people who have never had their vows stolen." Myrth's voice turned flat. "I will break his jaw if he speaks again." Thyren did not look away from the hunter. "You will be silent," he said, and there was prime weight in the words. The hunter's lips parted, then closed, as if an invisible hand had shut them. Vaelis stared at Thyren. She had felt dominance before, weaponized and ugly. This felt different. This felt like a gate slamming shut to keep monsters from spilling out. Thyren turned slightly, and his gaze found Vaelis again. "Do not let him carve fear into you. He wants you frantic. Frantic people open doors without realizing they are turning the handle." "I am not opening anything," Vaelis said, but her voice came out thin. Myrth's eyes softened by a fraction. "Come, you will eat. Then we deal with the mark." They fed her in a small chamber that felt less like a dining room and more like a war table. Bread, broth, fruit that tasted too bright in a stone fortress. Vaelis ate because her hands were steady enough to lift a spoon, because Myrth watched her like a guard, because refusing would not prove strength, only stubbornness. Thyren did not sit close. He stayed across the room, leaning against a pillar, as if he had made himself part of the architecture. His eyes tracked her without staring. When Vaelis looked up, their gazes met, and something low and complicated moved in her chest. She wanted to hate him for being what he was. Prime. Powerful. The kind of alpha who could decide the shape of other people's lives with a sentence. And yet he kept placing the choice back in her hands, even when it made his life harder. That was dangerous too. Hope was a softer chain, but it could still bind. When she finished eating, Myrth led her to a narrow hall lined with rough stone. "Breathing," Myrth said. Vaelis snorted. "You think breathing will stop an entire city from smelling me?" "I think your panic makes you loud," Myrth said, "and loud gets you caught." Vaelis forced her shoulders down, though tension clung to her like wet cloth. "Fine, tell me." Myrth stood close enough that Vaelis could feel her presence without it becoming a threat. "Inhale through your nose, slow, count, hold, exhale through your mouth like you are cooling something hot." Vaelis did it once, then again. Her chest loosened slightly. The cloak still muted her scent, but underneath she could feel her Omega signature restless, like a creature pacing inside her ribs. Myrth's voice stayed steady. "You cannot erase your scent, you can shape it. You can make it smaller, tighter, like a fist instead of an open hand." Vaelis closed her eyes. She imagined the scent like light. She imagined pulling it inward, compressing it into a point behind her sternum. It felt strange, like trying to swallow a scream. Her breath caught. Myrth's fingers lifted, not touching. "Good, again." Minutes passed, then more. Vaelis's skin cooled. Her heartbeat slowed. Mark in her palm still pulsed, but the panic around it thinned. When Vaelis finally opened her eyes, Myrth watched her with a look that was almost approval. "You do not break easily." "I do," Vaelis whispered. "I just do it quietly where no one can see." Myrth's gaze sharpened, and for a heartbeat Vaelis saw the predator beneath the calm. "Then let us be the ones who see, not to own you, to remember what was done to you so it cannot be rewritten." Vaelis swallowed. The words scraped tender places. Night settled over the enclave. The fortress dimmed, lights lowering, footsteps softening. Vaelis was given a room, spare and clean, with a bed that looked too soft to trust. There was no lock on the outside. That should have made her feel safer. It did not. She sat on the edge of the bed, cloak draped over her shoulders like armor. The mark on her palm burned faintly, as if it enjoyed the quiet. She kept her hand curled in her lap, as if hiding it from the air would hide it from the world. A knock came at the door. "Enter," Vaelis said, because refusing to speak was just another kind of surrender. Thyren stepped inside. He did not cross the threshold fully. He stayed near the doorway like a guest. "The ritual circle is ready," he said. Vaelis's mouth went dry. "Now," Thyren nodded. "Sauron prefers night, less interference from city wards, less movement above ground, fewer eyes for the regent to borrow." Vaelis stood. Her knees felt steady, but her stomach churned. "If he can watch through reflections, can he watch through me?" Thyren's expression tightened. "He can try. That is why we are using layered wards and why there will be no mirrors, no polished surfaces, no water bowls, nothing that can become a window. If he pushes, he will meet my seals first." Vaelis hesitated. "You said earlier you would seal your wing." Thyren's eyes flicked away, then back. "If your scent spikes, the Enclave will react. We are a pack, even when we pretend we are only a council. Instinct is not a choice for everyone, but control can be." Vaelis stared at him. "So you are going to lock yourself in with me so no one else can get in?" Thyren's jaw flexed. "So no one else can make you feel hunted in the middle of a ritual." "And you," Vaelis said quietly. "What about you?" A pause, the smallest crack in his composure. "I will endure," Thyren said. Vaelis hated that the words made her chest ache. "Do not do anything heroic," she said. "I have had enough men deciding to bleed for me without asking if I wanted the debt." Thyren's gaze softened. "Then I will not bleed. I will only stand where you need a wall." He led her through the Enclave, down a stairway that spiraled deeper into the rock. The air grew cooler. The rune hum grew stronger. At the bottom, an archway opened into a circular chamber etched with an intricate floor pattern. There were no mirrors, no glass. The lights floated like pale fireflies, matte and soft. The stone walls were rough, deliberately unpolished. A bowl sat near the circle, not reflective, carved from black porous rock. A cloth lay folded beside it. A small ritual blade, dull-looking but keen, rested on a stone slab. Sauron stood at the edge of the circle. Kalar and Nyxel waited nearby. Myrth leaned against the wall, still as a shadow. Oryx was absent, which made Vaelis's nerves twitch. Sauron lifted his staff slightly. "Vaelis, stand in the center. Hold out your left hand." Vaelis stepped into the circle. The rune lines beneath her feet warmed, not burning, but alive. She held out her hand. Sauron's voice grew rhythmic. "This mark is a vow knot, not a simple brand. It is tied to a promise made without your consent. We will loosen the knot. We will not rip it, because ripping can tear your mind with it." Vaelis swallowed. "Do it." Sauron nodded to Kalar. Kalar moved to the circle boundary and placed his hands on 2 rune stones. A low barrier rose, almost invisible, like heat shimmer. Vaelis felt her ears pop slightly, as if the room had sealed itself from the world. Nyxel circled the chamber, feathers whispering. He traced quick rune signs in the air. Each sign dissolved into a dull ash that fell and vanished before it hit the floor. Myrth's gaze pinned Vaelis. "Breathe." Vaelis did. Thyren stood just outside the circle, facing her. Close enough to anchor her, far enough to keep his promise. His presence was a cold, steady line in the room, like moonlight on stone. Sauron picked up the ritual blade. "A cut, one line, you will feel it, you will not be harmed beyond it." Vaelis lifted her chin. "I have been harmed by worse things than honesty." Sauron's eyes softened. "I know." He drew the blade across the edge of her palm, just enough to bead blood. Pain flashed bright and clean. Vaelis sucked in a breath but did not jerk away. The mark pulsed, reacting, as if offended by the interruption. Sauron let a single drop fall onto the rune line that intersected the center. The rune flared, then sank into the stone-like ink soaking into paper. The air changed. Vaelis felt a pressure behind her eyes, not physical, but intimate, as if fingers pressed gently against the inside of her skull. The regent, she thought wildly. He is reaching. Her blood warmed, her scent stirred. Myrth's voice cut through her fear. Stay with your breath. Do not chase the panic. Let it pass like weather. Vaelis inhaled, slow. She tried to compress her scent. She imagined pulling it inward, tighter, smaller. Soren's chant deepened. The rune lines around Vaelis lit in sequence, forming a spiral that turned slowly beneath her feet. The mark on her palm throbbed. It was not pain exactly. It was insistence. Then Vaelis heard it, not from the walls, not from the others, from inside herself. Return, the voice said. Soft, familiar. Like a lover whispering in a dark room, like a command disguised as devotion. Vaelis's knees threatened to buckle. Thyren's voice rose, calm and iron. Vaelis, look at me. She lifted her gaze. Thyren's eyes held hers with a focus so steady it felt like hands on her shoulders, but he still did not touch. You are here, he said. You are not his, you are yours. The words hit like a rung beneath her feet. Vaelis clung to them. Soren's chant rose. The rune's spiral tightened. For a heartbeat, Vaelis felt the mark loosen. Like a knot easing. Like a noose being lifted from the skin without tightening. Relief surged so hard she nearly sobbed. And then her scent broke. It was not the explosive spill from the gala. It was worse because it was intimate. It bloomed from her like warmth from skin after a long, cold day, sudden and undeniable. The cloak was not on her now. Nothing muted it. The scent filled the chamber, soft and lunar and raw. Kaler inhaled sharply at the circle boundary. Nyxel went rigid mid-rune sign, wings twitching. Myrth's pupils widened, and for one terrifying second the panther beneath her skin surfaced in her posture. Thyren's jaw clenched, and Vaelis saw it, the first crack in his restraint. His nostrils flared once. His eyes flashed. Vaelis's stomach twisted with shame. I did not mean to. I know, Thyren said, voice rougher. Breathe, stay with me. The room thickened with instinct. It did not turn into chaos, not yet, but Vaelis felt it like heat rising, like a storm building pressure. They were all holding themselves back, and holding back had edges. Soren's chant faltered, then steadied. Sweat beaded at his temple. The mark is fighting. It is using her scent as leverage. Vaelis swallowed hard, then cut it harder. No, Soren said, sharp. We do not bleed you into obedience. The words struck Vaelis strangely, like kindness disguised as discipline. The rune's spiral flared bright. Vaelis's palm burned. The mark pulsed, and suddenly Vaelis felt a tug, not from the regent but from the room. Threads. Invisible, trembling threads that ran from her chest to Thyren, to Myrth, to Kaler, to Nyxel, even to Soren. Not dominance, not command, resonance. Like her scent had reached out and found matching frequencies in their blood. Vaelis gasped. The pull was not sexual, not purely. It was something deeper, older, as if her body recognized them as a place to belong. It made her want to step forward, to close distance, to press into the safety of stronger bodies, to be held without being trapped. The craving terrified her. Cravings could be used. Nyxel's voice was strained, almost disbelieving. That is impossible unless she is. Do not, Vaelis snapped, and her voice cracked like a whip. The threads vibrated in response, reacting to her will. Silence hit. Kaler's hands stayed on the rune stones, knuckles white. Prime, we are close to a breach. Thyren's gaze did not leave Vaelis. Soren, can you finish? Soren's eyes were grim. Yes, but the moment the knot loosens fully, the regent may yank. If he yanks, he may try to pull her mind through the mark. We need a seal on her, temporary, not a mate mark. A ward tether. Vaelis's heart stuttered. No marks. Thyren spoke quietly, and the quiet was heavier than shouting. Not on your skin, on the room. He stepped forward to the circle boundary and placed his palm just outside the glowing line. Rune light crawled up his fingers, then stopped at his skin as if it met a cliff. He spoke a word, ancient and sharp, and the chamber answered. A second barrier rose inside the first, tighter, closer to Vaelis, like a dome of cold air. Vaelis felt the threads tighten, then settle, as if the room itself had become the anchor instead of her body. Thyren's voice was low. Now, Sauron's chant surged. The rune spiral snapped inward. The mark on Vaelis' palm flared black, then cracked like dry paint. Vaelis screamed, not from the cut, not from pain, from the sensation of something trying to pull her inside out. The regent's voice roared in her skull, enraged, intimate, cruel. You cannot take what is sworn. Vaelis' vision blurred. For a heartbeat she saw a stone sky, a door rimmed with dried blood, her own hand pressed to it, and behind the door, something vast breathing in the dark. Then the dome of rune air tightened, and the vision shattered. Vaelis sagged, gasping. The mark did not vanish completely. It changed. The crown shape broke into a jagged crescent, dimmer now, less precise, like a leash that had been cut but still trailed. Sauron's shoulders slumped with exhaustion. We loosened it, not removed, but he cannot see as clearly now. The window is fogged. Vaelis stared at her palm. Blood smeared across the broken sigil, her chest heaved. Myrth's voice was soft, closer now. Good. Stay with your breath. Vaelis nodded, but the threads still hummed. She could feel all of them, like the room itself had become a living thing made of bodies and instincts and restraint. The resonance made her ache. Thyren's eyes were bright, controlled, and for a heartbeat Vaelis saw how hard he was holding himself, not just from desire, from the burden of being prime, the one expected to stay stable while others shook. Thyren inhaled slowly. Seal the chamber, he said to Kalar. Now. Kalar's gaze flicked to Vaelis, then to Thyren. You are taking responsibility. Thyren did not hesitate. Yes. Kalar pressed down on the rune stones. The outer barrier thickened. The door seals flared. Nyxel moved fast, tracing one last rune sign that settled into the air like a net. No one gets in, he said. No sound gets out. If someone loses control, they lose it in here, not in the corridors. Myrth's eyes stayed on Vaelis. You will not be alone. Vaelis wanted to laugh at the irony. It begged for distance. Now the room was sealed with her inside a circle of alphas, and yet she did not feel hunted. She felt held. The difference made her throat tight. Thyren stepped back from the barrier line and spoke another rune word. A final seal clicked into place, not on Vaelis, but on the chamber itself. My wing is sealed, he said, voice rough. No one enters unless I open it. Vaelis' pulse stumbled. So I am trapped with you. Thyren met her gaze. You are protected with me. Words, Vaelis whispered. Thyren's expression softened, and for a moment the Prime Leader looked like a man who had once been chained and had sworn never to become the chain. Then watch my actions, he said. That is the only language that matters. The heat in Vaelis' blood did not crest into something uncontrollable, not fully, but it licked at her edges like flame. Her scent still lingered in the chamber, muted now by the dome, but present. Her body wanted closeness, grounding, contact. Vaelis clenched her fists, nails biting into her palm, careful not to reopen the cut. Thyren did not move toward her. He stayed where he was, breathing slowly as if he were anchoring the room by sheer will. The restraint was almost erotic in its own way, the promise in what he refused. Minutes passed. The pressure eased. Vaelis' scent tightened, pulled inward by the breathing Myrth had taught her. The threads dulled, not gone, but less urgent, like a chord no longer being strummed. Sauron wiped his brow. We have time now, not much, but enough to move before dawn without the regent watching every blink. Oryx's voice came from the sealed door, muffled at first, then clearer as Nyxel opened a small sound channel without breaking the barrier. You are going to want to hear this. Kalar's eyes narrowed. You were absent. Collecting, Oryx replied lightly. Information, names, invitations. A few keys that are not supposed to exist. Vaelis' stomach tightened at the word keys. Nyxel lifted a hand, and the door seal parted just enough for Oryx to slip inside. He looked around, took in the tense posture of every alpha, and raised his brows. Oh, the air is thick, he said. Should I be jealous or afraid? Myrth's gaze sharpened, and Oryx's grin turned cautious. Thyren's voice was flat. Report. Oryx sobered. He pulled a folded strip of black paper from inside his coat. It looked like ordinary invitation stock at first glance, but when he held it near the rune light, hidden ink flared, revealing a map of tunnels under the city. Auction is at dawn, Oryx said. Not in a ballroom, underground. They call it the Velvet Pit because they like to pretend it is elegant while they do ugly things. Masks, candles, gold, bidding slips made of skin parchment. And it is not just omegas. It is anything rare enough to make people forget they have souls. Vaelis felt her stomach turn. She kept her face still with effort. My fiancé, Oryx nodded. He is not the host. He is a bidder. He is going to play the proud groom and claim you by contract, and the crowd will nod because they like familiar stories. A house claim, a legal seal, a pretty omega who stops resisting. Vaelis's palm burned. The contract is real. Oryx's eyes glittered. Real paper, fake seal. I found the stamp pattern. It is copied from the house registry, but the rune underlayer is wrong. Whoever forged it did not know the second layer is blood-keyed. Kaler's gaze sharpened. That could fracture the room. Buyers hate being made fools. Nyxel's wings shifted, restless. Or it could make them angry and violent. Thyren's eyes stayed on Vaelis. You do not have to go. Vaelis laughed once, bitter. They are selling me. If I do not go, they still hunt me. If I go, I can at least see who stands behind the curtain. Myrth's voice was quiet. You want to look your monster in the face. Vaelis swallowed. Yes. Soren stepped closer, staff tapping softly. Your mark is weakened, but the regent still has a thread. If he tugs at the auction, he might still open a door. Thyren's jaw tightened. We will not let him. Kaler's tone was practical. Plan, Vaelis will appear alone. We will be there in shadow, not with scent marks, with rune tethers, hidden, non-invasive. Vaelis's head snapped up. You are going to put hidden marks on me. Kaler met her gaze without flinching. Not a bond, a ward slip. It sits on your clothing or hair, it burns away if touched. It does not claim you, it locates you. Vaelis hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but I decide where it goes. Oryx's grin returned. I like her, Nyxel snorted. You like anyone who threatens to bite you. Oryx placed a hand over his chest. Unfair. I also like people who pay me. And she is going to pay me eventually with the priceless currency of not dying. Thyren's eyes narrowed slightly. You are already paid. Oryx's grin sharpened. Not by you. Vaelis's stomach tightened. By who? Oryx's gaze slid to her, and for a heartbeat, something too serious flickered there. By the side that wants the vault found before the regent opens it. That is all you need tonight. Vaelis's pulse quickened. Another secret. Another leash disguised as help. She wanted to demand more, but the air felt like it was running out of time. Kaler unrolled the map. We go through these tunnels. The auction hall is warded. We cannot storm the front. We enter through the service corridor. Nyxel breaks seals from above. Myrth and I control the crowd. Soren stabilizes the mark. Thyren goes for the regent if he manifests. And me, Vaelis said. Silence, brief, loaded. Thyren's voice was low. You keep your breath. You keep your scent tight. You do not let anyone touch your palm. If someone tries to claim you, you step back and you speak one word. What word? Vaelis asked. Thyren's gaze held hers. Stop. The simplicity made her throat tighten. They moved before the enclave fully woke. Vaelis was given simpler clothes, dark and flexible, nothing that would snag on stone. Her cloak returned, scent shielding woven into the lining. Soren dabbed something cool onto the cut on her palm, a salve that smelled faintly of herbs and cold ash. Myrth adjusted the cloak at Vaelis's shoulders, fingers careful. You will be watched. They will try to make you panic. Panic makes scent loud. Loud makes alpha stupid. Vaelis's jaw tightened. Then they will have to deal with me calm. Myrth's mouth curved slightly. Good. Thyren walked beside Vaelis as they descended into the tunnels. He did not touch her. He did not crowd her. but his presence was close enough to feel like a shield. Vaelis hated that her body recognized it as safety and wanted to lean into it. The tunnel air smelled of damp stone and old rust. Water dripped somewhere in the dark. Rune lights on the walls pulsed faintly, guiding them. Oryx moved ahead like a shadow with a grin, humming under his breath as if this were a game. Vaelis kept her breath slow. In, hold, out. Her scent stayed tight, compressed like a secret. Then, footsteps, not theirs. Many. Moving in rhythm, too many for a normal patrol. Kaler lifted a fist, signaling stillness. Everyone froze. From the darkness ahead, figures emerged. A pack, no marks, no insignia. Their eyes were dull, their movements smooth and synchronized, like puppets sharing one string. Their scents were wrong, washed out, as if someone had scooped the soul out of them and left only muscle and obedience. Nyxel's wings tucked tight. Hollow-bound, he whispered. Soren's face went grim. Bound by a stolen vow. Their will is not theirs. Vaelis felt cold crawl up her spine. The regent can do that. Soren nodded, voice tight. He uses oath magic. He turns promises into chains. The hollow-bound pack stopped, blocking the tunnel. One stepped forward, a wolf shifter by build, but his eyes looked like empty glass. His voice came out flat. Give the key. Vaelis's palm burned under the bandage. Thyren stepped forward, and the tunnel seemed to narrow around him. No. The hollow-bound moved as one. It happened fast. A rush of bodies. The sound of claws scraping stone. A flash of rune light as Nyxel flung a seal into the air, creating a brief barrier. Myrth flowed into motion, silent and lethal, her form shifting, bones and shadow reshaping. For a heartbeat, Vaelis saw the panther, night black and sleek, eyes bright as stars. Kaler slammed his hands into the tunnel wall. A shield barrier flared, pushing the hollow-bound back. They hit it like waves hitting rock. Oryx darted behind them, laughing softly. Oh, this is messy. Thyren did not roar, did not posture. He spoke rune words that snapped like commands. The hollow-bound shuddered, their bodies resisting as if the magic tried to grab their strings. For a moment, one of them blinked, and a flicker of humanity surfaced. Help, the hollow-bound breathed, the word barely audible. Then the blankness returned. Vaelis's throat tightened. They were not choosing this. They were weapons. Myrth struck with precision, claws raking along tendons, disabling without killing. Kaler's barrier pinned two against the wall. Nyxel's wings swept, feather edges slicing rune threads in the air, cutting the binding lines that shimmered faintly around the hollow-bound like invisible leashes. Soren raised his staff and spoke a word that made the tunnel vibrate. A soft light washed over the hollow-bound, and their movements faltered, as if the borrowed will hesitated. Thyren's gaze flicked to Vaelis. Stay behind me. Vaelis's jaw clenched. I am not your fragile thing. I did not say you were, Thyren replied, voice rough. I said stay alive. A hollow-bound lunged toward Vaelis, slipping around Kaler's shield edge with unnatural speed. Vaelis reacted without thinking. She stepped aside, grabbed the attacker's wrist, and twisted hard, using the weight of their momentum. The hollow-bound hit the ground with a dull thud. Vaelis's hands shook afterward, adrenaline flooding her veins. The hollow-bound on the ground turned their blank eyes up at her. Their mouth opened, and for a heartbeat, a different voice tried to speak through them. A whisper like silk. Key. Vaelis recoiled. The mark burned. Thyren's rune seal flashed, and the whisper cut off like a throat closed. The fight ended as abruptly as it began. The hollow-bound, disabled and bound by Kaler's barrier, lay breathing on the stone. They did not plead. They did not curse. They stared at nothing. Soren knelt by one, fingers hovering over the forehead without touching. His face was tight with anger that looked like grief. They are tied to a master vow. We cannot free them here, not tonight. Vaelis swallowed hard. Then we are walking into a room full of people who might not be people anymore. Oryx flicked blood off a glove as if annoyed by the mess. People are always people. They just choose different sins. The hollow-bound do not get to choose. That is the real horror. Nyxel's eyes were sharp. We are late. They moved again, faster, deeper into the tunnel network. Vaelis's breath stayed slow, but her mind raced. The regent was not just hunting her. He was controlling entire packs. He was turning will into property. The auction was not a market. It was a ritual disguised as commerce. As they approached the last tunnel junction, the air changed. It grew warmer, scented with incense and old wax. Faint music drifted through stone, muffled strings that sounded like a lullaby played at a funeral. Oryx raised a hand, signaling stop. He pressed his ear to the wall, then smiled. We are close. They reached a corridor lined with old brick that looked newer than the surrounding tunnels, reinforced by recent wardwork. Rune symbols crawled along the ceiling like spiders made of light. Kaler studied the runes. Trap corridor. Soren's voice was low. These seals are not meant to kill. They are meant to close. Oryx's grin sharpened. Like a mouth. They stepped forward anyway, because there was no other path. The moment Vaelis crossed the threshold, the corridor shuddered. Stone plates slid from the walls with a grinding sound, sealing entrances behind them. The ceiling runes flared. A seal slammed down in front of them, cutting off the way forward. They were trapped in a narrow box of brick and glowing symbols. Vaelis's breath hitched. Her sense stirred, eager to spike under fear. Myrth's voice cut through it. Breathe. Vaelis forced air into her lungs. Kaler slammed his palm into the nearest wall plate. Rune burned his skin with a hiss. It is keyed to something, not our runes. Soren's eyes narrowed. Regent runes, vow-based, it will not open to force. Oryx stepped back, hands up, grin too bright. Well, that is inconvenient. Nyxel's eyes sharpened on him. You led us here. Oryx's grin flickered. Vaelis's stomach dropped. Betrayal was a familiar taste. It came with a certain cold clarity, the way the world sharpened right before you were pushed off a ledge. Thyren's voice was dangerously quiet. Oryx held up a finger. Before you decide to snap my neck, listen. I did not lead you into a trap. I led you into the trap you would have stepped into anyway. Now we know it is keyed. Now we know the corridor is sealed. And now I can do this. He stepped to a seam in the brick and pressed his thumb against a spot that looked like nothing. A rune shimmered and then vanished, revealing a hidden latch. Vaelis stared. Oryx glanced back over his shoulder, eyes gleaming. Do not move, he said softly, and for once his voice held no humor. He pulled the latch. The corridor floor dropped out from under them. Vaelis screamed as gravity yanked her down, cloak flaring. For a split second she thought she was falling into a pit, that this was the velvet pit itself, swallowing her. Then a net of rune light snapped tight around her waist, catching her mid-drop. Kaler's barrier, Thyren's seals, their preparations saving her from smashing into stone. They dropped into a lower tunnel, landing hard but controlled. Dust puffed up. Vaelis's knees hit stone, pain flashing. Above them, the corridor plates slammed shut again, sealing over the opening like nothing had happened. Oryx landed lightly, dusting off his coat. Surprise! The trap corridor was a decoy. The real entrance is below, and it only opens if you commit to the fall. Nyxel's wings flared, anger sharp. You could have told us. Oryx's grin turned razor thin. And risk the regent hearing it through your fears. No, better you thought I betrayed you. That lie was safer. Vaelis pushed herself up, breathing hard, rage and relief tangling. You used my panic as camouflage. Oryx met her eyes without apology. Yes, because you are loud when you are angry, but you are louder when you are afraid. I needed you afraid for the trap to believe you. Thyren's gaze stayed on Oryx, cold. You will explain later. Oryx bowed slightly. Gladly, after we survive. The tunnel ahead opened into a carved stone passage lined with velvet drapes, absurdly luxurious underground. Candlelight flickered behind rune glass panels that were deliberately clouded, not reflective. The air smelled of wine, sweat, and expensive incense meant to mask desperation. They had reached the velvet pit. Sound seeped through the drapes. Murmurs, a low laugh, the clink of coins, the soft rustle of masks and silk, and beneath it, the hungry quiet of predators gathered for a feast. Kaler's voice was a whisper. Positions. Nyxel looked up, eyes tracking the ceiling. I go high. Myrth's form shifted subtly, shoulders rolling, spine flexing like a panther about to spring. I go dark. Soren's fingers brushed Vaelis' bandaged palm, careful and brief. The mark is fogged, but not dead. If you feel a pull, speak it. Do not hide it. Vaelis nodded, throat tight. Thyren stepped closer, just enough that Vaelis felt the cold, clean edge of his scent through the cloak. It steadied her in a way she resented. You decide, Thyren murmured. We can pull you out now. Vaelis swallowed. She looked at the drapes, at the candlelight bleeding through like a promise of cruelty. I go in, she said. Thyren's gaze held hers. Then you are not alone, even if you cannot see us. Vaelis exhaled, slow. No marks. No marks, Thyren agreed. Kaler tucked a tiny rune slip into the seam of Vaelis' cloak near her shoulder. It warmed for a second, then cooled, becoming invisible. Vaelis felt nothing else, no invasion, no claim. Oryx leaned in, voice low. Walk like you belong, predators respect certainty. And if you see your groom smile, it will make him arrogant. Vaelis' mouth went dry. I might vomit on him. Oryx's grin flashed. Also acceptable. They parted. Nyxel vanished upward into shadows. Myrth melted into darkness. Kaler and Soren disappeared behind the drapes along the edges. Thyren lingered for a heartbeat longer, eyes on Vaelis as if carving her into memory. Then he stepped back, and Vaelis stepped forward. She pushed through the velvet drapes and entered the auction hall. It was circular, like a theater. Candles lined the walls, their flames steady, fed by rune wards that kept smoke low. The ceiling was carved stone, but painted to look like a night sky with tiny gold stars. The floor was polished wood, matte finished to avoid reflections. Rows of seats rose in tiers, filled with masked figures. Some wore elegant half-masks. Some wore full animal masks that made their eyes glow. Some wore nothing, trusting their power. At the center stood a stage, and on the stage, a single chair, ornate and cruel, with velvet straps that looked decorative until you saw the buckles. Vaelis' stomach turned. A hush rippled through the crowd as she walked in. Even with the cloak, even with her breath tight, they felt something. Curiosity, hunger, the thrill of a rare thing arriving. Vaelis walked to the edge of the stage and stopped. She lifted her chin, refusing to look down. A man in a gold mask leaned forward. Is that her? A woman in a black veil laughed softly. Too pretty to be real. Vaelis wanted to spit. Instead, she stepped up onto the stage. The wood felt solid under her feet. The chair waited behind her like a threat. An auctioneer stepped forward, wearing a pale mask with a painted smile. His voice was smooth, too warm. Welcome, honored patrons. Tonight dawn brings us a rarity, a sweet scent that made a tower go still. A key, some whisper, a prize, others say. But we are civilized here, we deal in contracts. Vaelis' jaw tightened. The auctioneer gestured and two attendants approached, faces hidden. They reached for her cloak. Vaelis stepped back. Do not touch me. The attendants hesitated. The auctioneer chuckled. She speaks. Charming. Of course, we will not offend. Perhaps her future owner will do the unveiling. A murmur of approval. Laughter. Coins clinked. Vaelis' skin crawled. Then she saw him, her fiancé, seated in the front tier as if he owned the room. No mask. He did not need one. His arrogance was his disguise. He wore a dark suit and a ring that glinted in candlelight. His eyes were fixed on Vaelis with possessive satisfaction. He stood slowly, letting the room watch him rise. I believe there is no need for bidding. The crowd murmured, annoyed and intrigued. He lifted a parchment. By contract, she belongs to my house already. I will take what is mine. Name your inconvenience fee. The auctioneer's painted smile widened. A contract, how tasteful. Vaelis' blood went cold, then hot. Rage steadied her more than fear ever had. She walked to the edge of the stage, stopping directly above him. She looked down into his face and let her voice carry. "You forged it." A ripple through the crowd. Her fiancé's smile did not falter. "Darling, you are confused, you signed." "I signed a page you swapped," Vaelis said. "You think I do not know how seals feel under a fingertip. You think I have survived contracts my whole life without learning their teeth." His eyes narrowed. "Lower your voice," Vaelis laughed. "Now you want me quiet." She reached into the inside seam of her cloak where Oryx had told her to keep her hands. Her fingers closed around a folded slip of paper. Not the fake contract. Proof Oryx had collected it. Vaelis unfolded it and held it up to the candlelight. Hidden ink flared, revealing a registry imprint, the real seal pattern layered with blood-keyed runes. She did not understand all of it, but she did not have to. The crowd did. A man in a silver mask leaned forward sharply. "That is not his seal," another hissed. "It is copied." "Forgery," someone whispered, disgusted. Her fiancé's face tightened. "This is a lie." Vaelis's voice turned clear and hard. "If you claim me by contract, then bring the registry witness. Bring the blood key, or admit you thought you could sell me twice, once in a tower, once underground." The room shifted. Buyers did not like being cheated. Predators did not like being made fools. The auctioneer's painted smile faltered for the first time. "Sir, do you have verification?" Her fiancé's jaw clenched. "I do not need to verify what is mine." A laugh rose from the back, low and delighted. "Oh, but you do." The candles flickered. The air cooled. Vaelis's bandaged palm burned as if someone pressed it to a hot brand. A shadow spilled across the back wall, too dark, too thick, moving like ink poured into water. The crowd went silent as something stepped out of that shadow, not fully solid, not fully smoke. A crown shape hovered above its head, more concept than metal. The sable regent. No face. Only the impression of eyes fixed on Vaelis. His voice did not travel through air. It appeared inside Vaelis's skull, intimate as breath. "There you are." Vaelis's knees threatened to buckle, but she forced herself upright, nails biting into her palm through the bandage. The regent's shadow gaze slid to the room, and the voice spilled outward, echoing in every head, a shared violation. "The Omega key will be mine, today." The crowd shuddered. Some leaned forward with greedy awe. Some recoiled, fear souring their sense. Her fiancé's face went pale, and Vaelis understood with a jolt that he had thought he was dealing with a market, not a king. He swallowed. "Regent, my house offers tribute." The regent's attention barely brushed him. An insect, a tool. Vaelis's breath stuttered. She felt the broken mark in her palm twitch as if trying to reknit itself to the shadow. Then a new scent cut through the incense like cold wind. Thyren. He stepped into the hall without a mask. The crowd gasped. A prime alpha walking into a black market without hiding his face was not bravery. It was a declaration of war. Thyren's voice carried, calm and lethal. "This auction is over." Laughter burst from somewhere, nervous, disbelieving. The auctioneer stammered, painted smile cracking. "Prime, this is private commerce. You do not have authority here." Thyren's gaze did not even touch the auctioneer. It stayed on the regent's shadow. "You are stealing will and calling it commerce. You are binding pacts and calling it purchase. You are using her as a door. I am closing it." The regent's voice slid into Vaelis's mind again, silky with amusement. "Prime." Vaelis felt the pull on her palm strengthen, the broken crescent burning. The regent was tugging, testing the fogged window. Thyren stepped closer to the stage, stopping at its edge. He did not climb it. He did not touch Vaelis. He simply stood where every predator could see him refuse to claim her even now. "I challenge you," Thyren said, voice cold. "By old law, by vow law, you want a key, you face the lock." The room exploded into murmurs. Old law was not court law. It was older, carved into bones and pacts and blood rights. The kind of law that still held power in the deep places of the city. The regent's shadow head tilted, as if curious. Then the voice came, smooth as a knife drawn slowly. Very well. The candles flared, then dimmed. Around the hall, masked attendants began to move, too fast, too synchronized. Hollowbound. Vaelis' stomach dropped. Nyxel's scream split the air from above, not fear but warning. A rune sign flashed on the ceiling, slicing through the ward web like lightning. Myrth hit the stage from the side in a blur, her body shifting mid-leap, panther and woman and something in between, eyes bright with fury. She landed between Vaelis and the attendants, claws out, a living wall. Kalar rose from the crowd tier, throwing a barrier that snapped into place like a shield dome over the nearest spectators. People screamed, trapped behind safety they did not understand. Sauron's staff struck the floor, and rune lines flared across the stage, forming a circle under Vaelis' feet. "Stay inside," he commanded, not dominance, but urgent protection. Vaelis' breath hitched. She was on a stage, surrounded by violence, with the regent in the shadows and her fiancé staring at her like she had ruined him. And still, the most terrifying thing was the pull inside her palm. The regent was not attacking with claws. He was pulling on her. The first hollowbound rushed Thyren. Thyren moved like winter. A rune seal flashed from his hand, slamming the hollowbound back without breaking bones. Another seal caught a second attacker mid-leap and pinned them to the floor. Thyren's control was surgical, refusing to kill even when he could. Vaelis saw the choice in it. He would not become a monster to fight one. Nyxel dropped from above, wings spread wide, feathers cutting through the air. He sliced through rune seals on the walls, breaking the auction hall's control lattice. Candles guttered as the ward network destabilized. Myrth tore through the attendants with silent brutality, disabling, breaking straps, ripping away hidden chains. Her panther form flashed and vanished, a nightmare in motion. Kalar expanded his barrier, pushing the crowd back, separating buyers from fighters. Some screamed in fury, others in fear. Coins and daggers scattered on the floor. Vaelis' fiancé tried to run. He did not get far. Oryx appeared behind him like a joke turned deadly. "Leaving so soon," Oryx murmured, and Vaelis saw a small blade glint. Not cutting, just resting against the man's throat like a reminder of mortality. Her fiancé froze, trembling. "You cannot," Oryx smiled. "I can, but I am merciful tonight. Tell me who gave you the forged stamp." The man swallowed, eyes darting wildly. "I do not know, a courier, a shadow." Oryx's smile turned thin. "They all say that." Vaelis stared at her fiancé, and something in her chest went cold. He had not been the architect. He had been a greedy pawn, convinced he could profit from a woman's life. The regent's voice surged, annoyed. Enough. Vaelis' vision warped. The stage seemed to tilt. The rune circle under her feet flared, but the mark in her palm burned hotter, pulling against it. Soren's face tightened with alarm. "He is opening a thread." Thyren's head snapped toward Vaelis. His eyes widened a fraction. "Vaelis," Vaelis tried to speak. Her mouth opened, but the words stuck. The pull on her palm became a drag on her entire body, as if her blood had become magnetized. The regent's shadow lifted a hand. The air split. A portal opened behind Vaelis, not a swirling fantasy void, but a tear in reality that looked like darkness stretched thin. Cold poured out. The candle flames leaned toward it. Vaelis stumbled backward as the suction grabbed her cloak. Myrth lunged, claws digging into the stage, trying to anchor herself. No. Kalar's barrier strained, pushing against the portal's pull like a shield against a storm. Nyxel screamed a rune word from above, and the ceiling runes flared, trying to stitch the tear closed. Soren slammed his staff down again, chanting fast, sweat flying. The rune circle under Vaelis glowed white-hot, trying to pin her in place. It was not enough. The regent's voice slid into Vaelis' mind, triumphant and intimate. "Come home, Key." Vaelis' feet slid across the stage. The straps on the ornate chair flapped in the wind like hungry tongues. Thyren moved. He jumped onto the stage in one bound and reached for Vaelis, stopping for half a heartbeat as if asking permission with his eyes. Vaelis did not have time for pride. She reached for him first. Their hands slammed together, palm to palm, and the contact sent a shock through Vaelis' body, not sexual, not exactly, but electrifying in its meaning. Warmth, anchor, choice. Thyren's grip was firm, not crushing. He did not pull her into him. He pulled her away from the portal. For one heartbeat, it worked. Vaelis' body jerked forward toward Thyren. The portal shrieked like tearing cloth. Then the mark in Vaelis' palm flared, black and furious, and the regent yanked. The force ripped through Vaelis' arm. Pain shot up her shoulder. Her fingers slipped on Thyren's skin, slick with sweat and rune light. Thyren's eyes widened. He tightened his grip. "Hold on," Thyren snarled, voice breaking for the first time. Vaelis tried. She tried with everything in her, nails digging, muscles trembling. She felt the resonance threads inside her flare, reaching for every member of the pack in the hall, begging them to pull her back. Myrth's claws dug into the stage, her shoulders shaking with strain. Nyxel's wings beat hard, rune-light cracking. Kaler's barrier screamed, his face twisted in effort. Soren's chant turned ragged, desperate. Oryx abandoned the fiancé and lunged toward the stage, eyes wide. No, no, no. The regent's shadow did not fight them directly. He simply pulled on the vow knot in Vaelis' blood, and Vaelis understood with horrifying clarity. This was why she was a key, not because she was weak, because something in her was designed to respond when the vault called, to open when the right will tugged. Vaelis' throat burned. She looked at Thyren's face, at the raw fear in his eyes that he tried to hide, and something inside her snapped into a new kind of fury. "I choose," Vaelis gasped. She did not know if anyone heard her over the roar of the portal. She squeezed Thyren's hand once, hard. Then, with the last shred of control, she forced her fingers to open. Thyren's hand lunged for her again, but she pushed away, not from him, but from the regent's leverage. If she clung, she would drag Thyren in too. She saw it in the pull, felt it in the way the portal wanted more than her. It wanted the prime. It wanted the pack. It wanted to turn rescue into harvest. Vaelis fell backward into darkness. The last thing she saw was Thyren on the edge of the tier, reaching for her with a look that was pure vow. The last thing she heard was his voice, raw and dangerous, echoing as the portal swallowed her. "Vaelis." Then the world became cold stone and silence. "Wake up, little key." Vaelis' eyes snapped open to darkness that was not night. Stone arched overhead like a sky that had forgotten how to breathe. The air was cold, dry, and old, carrying the faint metallic tang of dried blood and the stale sweetness of long-burned incense. Beneath her palms, the ground felt like carved slate, etched with grooves that caught the tips of her fingers like scars. "I am not your key," she whispered, and the sound came back wrong, swallowed fast, as if the vault ate words. A laugh slid through the chamber, not from any corner, but from inside her skull, intimate as a thought. "You can deny the name," the voice said. "You cannot deny the design." Vaelis forced herself upright. Her cloak was gone. Her hair stuck to her cheek with sweat that had turned cold. Her left hand throbbed beneath the bandage, the broken crescent mark burning like a coal under skin. She drew in a breath, slow, the way Myrth had drilled into her body until it became instinct. In, hold, out. The panic did not vanish. It tightened. Around her, the Gloam vault stretched in a circle of monumental stone, too smooth to be natural and too ancient to be new. There were pillars that looked like frozen shadows. There were runes carved so deeply they seemed to drink the faint light from unseen sources. And at the far end of the chamber stood the doors. They were not one door, but a row of them, each tall enough to swallow a giant, each sealed with thick lines of dried blood that had turned almost black with age. The blood was layered in patterns that looked like both script and chains. Vaelis' stomach turned as she realized what it meant. Omega blood, many, enough to make the seals feel like a graveyard. She staggered toward the doors, feet scraping stone. Each step pulled at her palm, not like a leash now, but like a memory in her bones. The broken crescent burned hotter the closer she got. When she reached the nearest door, she froze. There, pressed into the blood seal like a stamp, was her mark. Not just similar. Hers, the same jagged crescent shape, imprinted into the lock as if her skin belonged to it. "No," Vaelis whispered. The air behind her cooled. A shadow gathered, thickening into a figure that was more absence than body. A crown shape hovered where a head should be, not metal but concept, the idea of authority made visible. It did not walk. It simply was, and the vault seemed to lean toward it. "You see it now," the sable regent said, voice soft and pleased. "You were not chosen by chance. You were made." Vaelis spun, heart slamming against her ribs. Made by who? The regent's shadow tilted, amused. By those who feared what was buried here and wanted a hand small enough to fit the lock. Vaelis' throat tightened. Old memories rose like sewage gas, men arguing, candle smoke, words like bloodline and resonance and key. She forced her chin up. "If I was made, then someone can unmake the design." Another laugh, quieter. "You are adorable when you think you are the first Omega to say that." Vaelis' bandaged palm pulsed. The regent's attention drifted to it. "You cut my window, you fogged my sight, clever." Vaelis' voice turned sharp. "Then you dragged me anyway." "I do not need sight when I have a vow thread," the regent replied. "Your blood remembers the path I only pulled." Vaelis swallowed hard. "Why the auction? Why the theater?" "Because people are easier to control when they believe they are choosing," the regent said, and there was something almost tender in the cruelty. A market makes monsters feel civilized. A contract makes theft feel legal. A stage makes a cage feel like destiny. Vaelis' hands clenched. "And you, what are you, a king, a curse?" The regent's shadow shifted closer. The vault did not echo his movement, it anticipated it. "I am a keeper, a collector, a man who learned that vows are stronger than chains. Chains rust, vows bite forever." The words prickled her skin. A quiet, dangerous understanding slid into place. Hollow-bound, vow magic. Pacts moving without will. "You bind them," Vaelis said. "You hollow them out." "I save them from their own weakness," the regent murmured. "Freedom makes people messy. People lie, betray, run, weep. Bound people are clean, useful." Vaelis' stomach churned. "You call that salvation." "I call it order," the regent said. "And you will call it mercy when you see what happens if the vault opens without a hand steady enough to hold it." Vaelis' gaze flicked to the doors, to the blackened blood seals. Her mark burned, pulling her forward. She took a step back instead, refusing the instinctive tug. "I am not opening anything," she said. The regent's shadow did not move, but the air thickened. "Then I will show you the consequence of refusing," he whispered. The vault changed. It did not transform like a dream. It invaded her senses like a poison. Vaelis smelled smoke. She heard screaming. She saw Astrium Enclave in flames, stone glowing red, wards shattered like glass. She saw Nyxel's wings torn, feathers drifting down like ash. She saw Kaler on his knees, barrier broken, blood on his mouth. She saw Myrth, panther form mangled, still trying to crawl toward someone she could not reach. She saw Soren's staff snapped, rune light dying in his hands. She saw Thyren. He stood amid the burning corridors, face carved into agony, his wrist scar split open as if an old shackle had been ripped fresh. His eyes searched the fire, desperate. "Vaelis," he rasped, and the sound pierced her chest like a blade. Vaelis lurched forward, a sob tearing loose despite her effort. "Stop, stop it." The vision intensified. The flames roared, the screams rose. "You did this," the regent said softly in her skull. "With your stubborn pride, with your refusal to become what you were made to be." Vaelis' knees hit stone. Her hands shook. The image of Thyren burning, reaching, broke something tender inside her. Then another voice rose under the panic, quieter, steadier, not magic, but memory. Do not chase the panic. Let it pass like weather. Myrth. Vaelis squeezed her eyes shut, forcing breath into her lungs until it hurt. In, hold, out, in, hold, out. She opened her eyes again. The vault was still stone. Cold, silent, no smoke, no ash, no screams. Only the regent's shadow, patient as rot. Vaelis swallowed hard, throat raw from a sob that had nowhere to go. It is a vision, she whispered. Everything is a vision, the regent replied. Even your hope. Vaelis stared at the doors. The blood seals looked older than any law in Noctharrow. They looked hungry. You showed me what you want me to fear, she said. Her voice trembled, but it held. You want me desperate. You want me to open it to save them. The regent's shadow tilted, almost approving. Yes, Vaelis's pulse hammered. Then you are afraid I will do something else. Silence, not absence. Consideration. Vaelis's left palm burned hotter, as if the broken crescent mark heard her and reacted. She lowered her gaze to her bandage and slowly peeled it back. The cut from Soren's ritual had sealed with salve, leaving a thin red line across her palm. Under it, the jagged crescent mark sat dimmer than before, cracked like dried ink. It hurt, not like a wound, like a demand. She remembered Soren's words, vow not. Do not rip it, or it tears your mind. She remembered Oryx's grin and the way he talked about keys that were not supposed to exist. She remembered Thyren's hand on hers, the shock of choice. Keys open, keys also lock. Vaelis's mouth went dry. If my mark is part of the lock, she whispered, then it can turn the other way. The regent's voice sharpened for the first time. Do not. Vaelis's heart stuttered at the sudden edge. She looked up at the shadow. There it is. The regent's shadow swelled, the crown's shape pulsing. You will obey. You will open. You were built for it. I was built, Vaelis said, and her voice steadied into something cold to be used. She lifted her left hand, palm up, as if offering it. Then she curled her fingers and pressed her thumb into the crescent mark hard enough to make her vision spark. Pain lanced, warmth spread. The regent's voice slid back toward silk, but the silk was strained. Vaelis, be reasonable. Your pack will die without you. My pack, Vaelis repeated, tasting the words. They felt dangerous, precious. Not ownership, but belonging by choice. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat and pictured them. Myrth's silent loyalty, Kaler's shield, Nyxel's sharp laughter, Soren's calm hands, Oryx's reckless grin, Thyren's restraint, his promise not to touch without consent, even when the world tried to force him. If she broke now, everything they had done would become another story about an Omega who existed to open a door. She opened her eyes. You want a key, Vaelis whispered. Then watch me become a lock. She turned to the doors. The nearest seal pulsed as she approached, reacting to her blood like it recognized a master. The air grew colder. The grooves in the floor seemed to align under her feet, guiding her to the exact point before the door where the blood script was thickest. The broken crescent on her palm throbbed like a heartbeat that was not hers. Do not, the regent said again, and now the voice carried anger. Fear. Vaelis lifted her hand and placed her palm against the seal. The moment skin touched dried blood, the vault hummed. The blood lines brightened faintly, as if remembering warmth. Vaelis's mark burned, and she felt the pull, the instinct to open, the design screaming in her bones. She did not fight it with denial. She guided it. She breathed in slow, held, breathed out, and imagined the turning not forward but backward, like reversing a cruel mechanism. Her palm stung. Her cut line reopened slightly, a bead of fresh blood welling. Vaelis swallowed, steadying her voice with iron. If you are a vow keeper, then hear mine. The regent's shadow surged toward her, but invisible barriers flared, rune lines on the floor igniting, reacting to her contact with the seal. The vault itself responded, not to him, to her. Vaelis stared at the door and spoke with shaking certainty. I am not a tool, I am not a door, I am not yours. The blood seal trembled. The crescent mark on her palm pulsed, then split wider like a crack forced open. Pain flared hot. Vaelis bit down hard on a cry. "Stop," the regent snarled, the word no longer silk but chain rattle. Vaelis pressed harder, using the pain as anchor. She was not opening. She was collapsing the latch. The seal on the door did not swing. It cracked. A thin line of light appeared in the blood script, not bright, not hopeful, but harsh like exposed bone. Then the entire blood pattern shivered and folded inward, as if the lock mechanism had been crushed from the inside. The door did not open. The door sealed itself. The blood lines turned blacker, deeper, sinking into the stone until they looked fused, no longer a separate layer that could be manipulated. A sound rolled through the vault like a groan. The regent's shadow recoiled, crown shape flaring. "You do not understand what you have done." Vaelis's breath shook as she pulled her hand away. Blood smeared her palm. The crescent mark looked different now. Not a clean brand, more like a scar, jagged and stubborn. "I understand enough," she whispered. "No one will open this with Omega blood again." The vault rumbled, dust drifted from the stone ceiling. The air shifted, pressure dropping like the vault had held its breath for centuries and now exhaled. Vaelis's stomach dropped. She had sealed the door. And the vault, deprived of its purpose, was collapsing. The regent's shadow sharpened into rage. "If the vault falls, it will bury you. It will bury your pack. It will bury the city above in the backlash." Vaelis stumbled backward, heart hammering. The floor vibrated under her feet. Cracks spidered along the stone near the pillars. "I did not mean," she started. The regent's voice cut in like a blade. "You meant defiance. Now you will mean consequence." The shadow surged, stretching toward her palm like a claw made of vow smoke. Vaelis raised her hand instinctively and felt the mark pulse like a beacon. A new sensation ripped through the vault. A tug, not the regent's pull. A familiar resonance, like threads catching a breeze. Vaelis turned her head. Far across the chamber, the air shimmered near a pillar, and a thin line of rune light appeared like a seam being pried open. Then a voice burst through the vault, bright and utterly inappropriate. "Honestly, you disappear for 5 minutes and everyone starts collapsing ancient prisons." Oryx stepped through the seam, dust on his coat, grin wide, eyes sharp. Behind him, the seam widened, and Nyxel dove through first, wings tucked tight, feathers flaring at the last second to stabilize his landing. Kaler followed, planting his feet like a fortress. Myrth came in low, panther form shifting into human mid-stride. Soren stepped through last, staff in hand, face pale with strain. And then Thyren. He came through the seam like winter-given legs. No mask. No hesitation. His eyes found Vaelis instantly, and the look on his face hit her harder than the quake. Relief, rage, fear, vow, all braided into one expression he could not hide. Vaelis's throat tightened so hard it hurt. "You came." Thyren's voice was rough. "You fell. We followed." The regent's shadow shifted, crown flaring. "Prime." Thyren stepped between the shadow and Vaelis without touching her. "Regent." The vault trembled again, heavier. A chunk of stone fell from the ceiling and shattered on the floor. Oryx tossed a small object into the air. Looked like a dull metal ring wrapped in matte cloth, inscribed with runes that did not glow until it spun. "Catch," he said to Soren. Soren snatched it, eyes widening. "A stabilizer." "A borrowed one," Oryx replied, grin turning tight. "Do not ask from where." Soren slammed the ring onto the floor and spoke a rune word. The ring flared, expanding into a low pulse that traveled through the stone like a heartbeat. The violent shaking softened slightly, shifting from imminent collapse to unstable tremor. Nyxel looked around, eyes sharp. "We have minutes." Kaler's gaze locked onto the regent. "We end this now." The regent's shadow laughed, low and cold. "End me, in my vault. Surrounded by vow stone and blood seals, you brought yourselves into my throat." Myrth's eyes gleamed. "Then we bite from inside." The regent's shadow swelled, and for the first time, it took shape beyond a crowned silhouette. It unfolded like smoke made muscle, a shifter form built from layered darkness and the faint glimmer of rune threads, each thread humming with stolen promises. Faces flickered in it and vanished, like trapped oaths trying to breathe. Vaelis' stomach turned. "You are made of them." "Of what they gave me," the regent purred. "Of what they begged me to take." His shadow hand snapped toward Vaelis. Thyren moved, but the regent did not aim for Vaelis' throat or heart. He aimed for her Omega nature. Thread of darkness whipped toward her palm, seeking to stamp a new mark, a pseudo-bond, a leash that would not require consent because it would be written into the blood. Vaelis' skin went cold. "No," she whispered. Thyren stepped into it. The dark thread struck Thyren's forearm and rune light exploded along his skin, fighting it. The pseudo-mark tried to sink, trying to brand him as proxy, to use the prime as a handle on the key. Thyren's jaw clenched. Pain flashed across his face. He did not cry out. Vaelis' chest cracked open with something fierce. "You do not get him," she snarled. The resonance threads inside her surged, reaching for Thyren, for Myrth, for Kaler, for Nyxel, for Soren, not to control them, to connect, to share weight, to make a net that could hold against the regent's pull. The regent's shadow laughed, delighted. "There it is. The why choose Omega, a nexus. A sweet little web. I wondered when you would show your true shape." Vaelis' breath hitched. So that was what Nyxel had almost said. Not just resonance. A rare Omega pattern that could bond to more than one, not as property, but as a pack core. A gift, a target. Thyren's voice cut through her spiral. "Vaelis, stay in yourself." She forced breath. In, hold, out. The regent tightened the pseudo-mark on Thyren's arm, darkness sinking deeper. Vaelis stepped forward, stopping just short of Thyren, close enough to feel his heat, his restraint, the effort it took him not to pull her into his chest and mark her out of instinct. She lifted her left hand, bloody palm open. "I choose," she said again, louder, and this time she meant it as magic, not desperation. "Not you," the regent's shadow hissed. "You cannot break vows by will." "I can break yours," Vaelis said, voice shaking with fury, "because I never agreed to them." She reached toward Thyren's arm, not touching, hovering her palm over the dark thread sunk into his skin. "Consent," she whispered. The word was simple, but in the vault it rang like a bell. Thyren's eyes met hers, bright with pain and something deeper. He nodded once. Vaelis breathed in and imagined her resonance not as a net that trapped, but as a blade that cut only what was forced. She exhaled and pushed, not dominance, not command, refusal. The dark thread shuddered. The pseudo-mark tried to hold, but it had no true anchor, only stolen vow pressure. Vaelis' refusal ripped through it like wind through ash. The darkness peeled off Thyren's arm in a ragged stream and snapped back toward the regent with a sound like tearing cloth. Thyren staggered one step, then steadied, breathing hard. His gaze did not leave Vaelis. "You did that." Vaelis swallowed, shaking. "I did not know I could." Kaler moved, voice sharp. "Less talking. Circle. Now." Soren slammed his staff down and began chanting, rune words spilling fast. Kaler pressed his palms to the floor and dragged them outward. A circle of light formed around the regent, expanding like a net made visible. Nyxel shot upward, wings slicing through the air, and carved rune signs into the stone ceiling with feather tips that glowed. The signs linked to Soren's circle, creating a cage that anchored top and bottom. Myrth moved like night. She did not attack the regent's body. She went for the crown. The crown's shape above the regent's shadow flared, pulsing with power, the source of his authority, the symbol that made stolen vows obey. Myrth leapt, shifting mid-air, claws extended. The regent's shadow whipped a tendril at her. Myrth twisted, letting it pass inches from her ribs and slashed through the crown. The crown cracked. A sound tore through the vault, not a scream, but the wail of 1,000 oaths being yanked loose. The regent's shadow staggered, shape rippling. Nyxel cried out from above. Mirror conduit, I see it. Vaelis' stomach dropped. There are no mirrors here. Not glass, Nyxel shouted. Stone polished by vow magic. A viewing plane. He dove toward a pillar that looked slightly smoother than the rest, a surface that caught light in a way the others did not. Nyxel slammed a rune seal into it, and the surface rippled like water. Behind it, for a heartbeat, Vaelis saw Noctharrow, 100 reflections, 1,000 eyes, the Regent's network. Nyxel's voice turned savage. No more watching. He struck the pillar again, harder, and the polished surface shattered into rough stone, the ripple dying like a cut throat. The Regent shrieked, shadow body convulsing. Soren's chant intensified. The rune circle around the Regent tightened, pulling inward, compressing his shadow into denser form. Kaler grunted, sweat dripping. He is resisting. Because he is not one vow, Soren snapped. He is many. We need to strip the borrowed oaths. Oryx stepped beside Vaelis, eyes bright, grin gone. Then you will love this. He shoved a folded packet of paper into Vaelis' free hand. Names. Hollowbound registry. Every pack he hollowed, every vow line tied to his crown, and the release phrase. I stole it from a man who thought he was immortal because he never touched blood with his own hands. Vaelis' fingers trembled as she unfolded the packet. The writing was in rune script and common tongue layered together. There were columns of names, pack marks, dates, and beside them, a single repeating rune phrase like a chorus. Vaelis' mouth went dry. If I speak it. Oryx's eyes held hers. You will cut his strings. But it will snap back through you. You will feel it. You will taste their fear, their anger, their relief. You will be the blade. Vaelis swallowed hard. Why me? Oryx's smile flickered, painfully human. Because he made you a key, and you decided to become a lock. Locks can also become cutters. Thyren's voice was tight. Vaelis, you do not have to carry all of this. Vaelis looked at him, at the pain in his arm, at the vow in his face that had dragged him into an ancient vault to save an Omega the city wanted to sell. She shook her head. I am already carrying it. I have carried it my whole life. Tonight I get to decide what it becomes. The vault shook again. Cracks widened. Dust fell in steady rain. Soren's voice strained. Now, if we do not break the vows, the circle will fail when the vault collapses. Vaelis stepped forward to the edge of the rune circle, stopping just outside it. The Regent's shadow twisted inside, crown cracked, conduit broken, still dangerous, still hungry. His voice slammed into her skull, no longer silky. You will not free them, they belong to me. Vaelis' hands shook, but her breath stayed slow. She lifted the packet of names. I do not need your permission, she whispered. She closed her eyes and spoke the release phrase, one line at a time, careful, steady, letting each word land like a key turned in reverse. I return what was stolen. I break what was forced. I unbind the vow that was taken without consent. I release the will to its owner. The rune circle flared. A wind rose inside the vault, not air, but presence. Voices, breath, the sensation of countless people waking from deep water. Vaelis' chest tightened as the backlash hit her. She felt terror that was not hers. Rage that tasted like copper. Grief that burned like salt. The hollow numbness of hollow-bound packs moving under Cheuja Ayave Aelya. She swayed, gasping. Thyren's hand hovered near her back, not touching. Vaelis. I am okay, she lied through clenched teeth. The Regent's shadow convulsed, threads ripping out of him like veins being torn. With each thread, a faint whisper echoed through the vault, names returning to mouths, choices returning to spines. The Regent screamed. Not with a human throat, with the sound of power losing shape. You are nothing without the vows, Vaelis whispered, voice raw. You are ash pretending to be a crown. The shadow thinned. The crown fragments above him crumbled into drifting black dust. Myrth struck once more precise, shattering the last intact shard of crown. Nyxel's voice rang from above. Conduit is dead. Kaler pressed harder, barrier tightening. Hold him, Hold him. Soren's chant shifted, turning from cage to compression. The rune's circle collapsed inward, shrinking until it was a tight ring around the regent's shadow. The regent's form tried to surge, tried to reach Vaelis one last time, but his tendrils fizzled like wet smoke. His voice came, small now, bitter. You think you saved them. They will still choose monsters. People always do. Vaelis stared at him, trembling with exhaustion and fury. Then they will choose with their own will. That is the only kind of living I will accept. The regent's shadow shuddered. Then it broke apart, not exploding, not dramatic, but disintegrating into fine ash, a rain of dead promises that fell onto the rune's circle and vanished as the runes burned it clean. Silence hit the vault like a held breath finally released. Vaelis sagged, knees buckling. Thyren caught her by the shoulders, finally touching, but careful, asking with his body if not with words. Vaelis did not flinch. She leaned into the contact for one heartbeat, letting it hold her upright. His voice was low, rough with emotion. I have you. Vaelis swallowed, eyes burning. Do not mark me. Thyren's hands stilled, then eased, respecting the boundary even now. I will not. The vault trembled again, harsher. Soren's head snapped up. We stabilized the fall, not stopped it. We must leave. Kaler looked to the sealed doors. Are they closed? Vaelis forced herself upright, wiping blood from her palm onto her own sleeve. She walked to the nearest door, ignoring the ache in her bones, and placed her hand on the seal again. The fused blood script did not pulse anymore. It did not recognize her as a handle. It felt like stone, locked. Vaelis exhaled shakily. It is done. No doors, no second chances. Oryx let out a breath that sounded like laughter and relief twisted together. That is the most attractive thing anyone has ever said in an ancient prison. Nyxel snorted. We are going to die under rock because you are flirting. Oryx flashed a grin. If we die, I want to die entertained. Thyren's gaze flicked to Oryx. Beacon, Oryx nodded, suddenly serious. It will take us out. Kaler tightened his barrier around them as Soren lifted the stabilizer ring and spoke a new rune phrase, reversing its pulse. The air shimmered, forming a seam like before. The vault groaned. A crack split one pillar, and stone sheared off, smashing the floor where Vaelis had stood minutes earlier. Now, Soren snapped. They ran. Vaelis's legs felt heavy, but Myrth took her elbow, steadying without dragging. Nyxel flew low, guiding them around falling debris. Kaler's barrier caught chunks of stone and threw them aside like fists of wind. Thyren stayed close, not touching, but positioned so that if the vault tried to swallow her again, it would have to go through him first. They dove through the seam as the vault screamed behind them. Cold air rushed. Then damp tunnel air hit Vaelis's lungs like life returning. They stumbled into the tunnels under Noctharrow, the seams snapping shut behind them. The ground still trembled faintly, like the city had felt the vault's death throes, but it did not collapse. The stabilizer had held the damage deep, burying the vault in its own sealed silence. Kaler exhaled hard. We are out. Soren leaned on his staff, pale. The vault is sealed. Permanently, if her lock holds. Vaelis stared down at her palm. The crescent scar burned, but it felt quieter now, no longer a call, more like a reminder. It holds, she whispered. Thyren's gaze stayed on her, intense and careful. You did what no one has done in centuries. You closed a door built to consume you. Vaelis's throat tightened. I did it because you came. Thyren's mouth tightened at the edges, emotion restrained like everything else in him. We came because we chose you. The words landed like warmth under her ribs. She did not trust warmth easily, but she did not throw it away either. They moved fast through the tunnels, avoiding patrol routes, following Oryx's stolen map. As they approached the surface, Noctharrow's distant sounds returned, the hum of engines, the whisper of rain, the city's constant hunger. Nyxel paused at a junction and looked upward, eyes narrowing. The Hollowbound. A pack stood ahead, blocking the tunnel exit, bodies tense, eyes no longer blank but confused, as if waking from a nightmare and not yet sure whose dream they were in. One stepped forward, a wolf shifter with shaking hands, his voice cracked. "What happened to us?" Vaelis swallowed. The backlash from the release phrase still echoed in her bones. She remembered their hollow numbness like a bruise. "You were bound," Vaelis said softly, "by someone who stole your vows." The wolf's eyes widened, pain flickering. "We did things." Myrth's voice was quiet, fierce. "You survived, now you choose what you become after." Soren stepped forward, staff lowered, non-threatening. "We can help you stabilize. The release leaves shock. It does not erase memory, but you are not his anymore." The pack shifters looked at one another, breathing hard, then slowly stepped aside, making a path. Vaelis walked past them, and one of them whispered, barely audible, "Thank you." The word hit her like a weight and a gift at once. They surfaced into a rain-soaked alley, the sky above the towers a dirty slate. Noctharrow smelled like wet iron and exhaust. Somewhere distant, sirens wailed, not close enough to help, close enough to remind. Oryx stretched like a man leaving a theater. "Now we do the boring part. Evidence. Names. The kind of killing the city pretends to respect." Kaler's voice was flat. "We expose the network." Nyxel's eyes gleamed. "I can broadcast from the old tower relays." The auction wards were tied to city conduits. "If we inject the list into the public stream, every house that bought will have its name dragged into daylight." Myrth's gaze sharpened. "They will try to silence us." Thyren's voice was cold. "Let them try." Vaelis' stomach tightened as she remembered her fiancé, his smug face on the auction tier. "My contract," she whispered. "If the houses still believe it." Oryx waved a hand. "Forgery is a delicious scandal. Buyers hate being made fools. Courts hate being embarrassed, and the regent's seal is gone. Without him, the fear will thin." Soren's gaze met Vaelis's. "The mark on your palm will fade slowly. It is no longer a leash, but it will attract attention. We should not pretend you can walk alone yet." Vaelis's jaw tightened. Alone had been her religion. Alone had been her survival. And yet, alone had almost gotten her sold. She looked at Thyren. "If I stay with Astrium, it is by my rules." Thyren nodded immediately. "Yes." And Vaelis added, voice tight, "No one uses my resonance as a weapon without asking me." Kaler inclined his head. "Agreed." Myrth's mouth curved slightly. "Good." Nyxel's wings shifted. "We are not his kind of pack. We do not bind by force," Oryx grinned. "We bind by mutual annoyance." Despite everything, a short laugh escaped Vaelis. It sounded foreign. She did not trust it. But it was real. They moved. Nyxel took them to a hidden relay point under an old tower, a place where forgotten cables and rune conduits ran like veins through the city. He pressed his palm to a panel and spoke a rune phrase. The panel lit, ancient systems waking with reluctant obedience. Kaler fed Oryx's packet into the relay, while Soren layered protective seals that would prevent the list from being erased by house influence. Myrth stood watch, still as death, listening for footsteps that were too confident. Thyren stayed near Vaelis, not looming, simply present. When the stream went live, Noctharrow did what it always did when a secret bled into daylight. It froze. Screens flickered across the city. Relay projections ignited in public squares. Names scrolled. House seals appeared beside transactions. Auction routes mapped themselves in cold light. Hollowbound registry lists flashed, and with them, a short rune phrase that Soren translated into plain language. "Release the forced vow. Return will to owner." People began to shout, some in fury, some in fear, some in relief. Vaelis watched a crowd across the street gather under a projection, faces tilted upward, the city's appetite turning on itself. Oryx exhaled. "Well, that will ruin some dinners." Myrth's gaze stayed on the street. "They will retaliate." Kaler's voice was grim. "Yes, but they cannot retaliate in silence now." Nyxel tilted his head. listening to distant sirens changing direction, multiplying not toward them but toward the richest districts. The courts are moving. Vaelis' throat tightened. She had lived her whole life believing power only moved in one direction, down onto the vulnerable. Tonight, it moved sideways, messy and bright and dangerous. Thyren's voice was low. We leave before the houses decide to blame you instead of themselves. Vaelis nodded. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was too awake. She followed them back into the tunnels, then into Astrium Enclave, the fortress swallowing her like a guarded breath. By the time they returned, the Enclave felt different. Not safer, but more real, not a myth, a place that had chosen to act. They brought the freed hollowbound packs into the outer courts, not as prisoners, but as wounded survivors. Soren moved among them with quiet authority, offering water, salves, rune stabilization. Kaler set barriers, not to cage, but to keep house hunters out. Nyxel stationed scouts on high points. Myrth stalked the perimeter like a promise. Vaelis stood in a corridor and watched it all, chest tight. Thyren approached slowly, stopping a few steps away. His arm was bandaged where the pseudo-mark had tried to take him. His face looked drawn, but his eyes were steady. "It is done," he said quietly. "The regent is gone." Vaelis' mouth went dry. "Gone is not the same as dead." Soren's voice came from behind them. He was made of stolen vows. When they returned to their owners, he lost shape. What remained burned in the circle. He cannot rebuild without a crown, without a conduit, without a vault. Vaelis turned. "And the vault is sealed," Soren nodded. "By your will, that matters." A quiet settled. Thyren's gaze stayed on Vaelis like he was afraid to blink. "You fell into darkness and came back with the door closed behind you. I do not know what to call that." Vaelis swallowed. Her palm throbbed. She thought of the stage. The portal. The cold stone sky. The doors sealed with Omega blood. She thought of the moment she had said, "I choose," and the world had listened. "Mine," she whispered. "I call it mine." Thyren's breath hitched slightly, emotion flickering across his face. Vaelis lifted her chin, forcing herself to speak what mattered before fear could twist it. "I do not want to be owned, not by a house, not by a regent, not by a prime. If I stay here, it is because I want to, because I choose you all." Myrth's voice drifted from the corridor's shadow, quiet. "We do not deserve that yet." Vaelis looked at her. "Then earn it." Myrth's eyes gleamed, and for a heartbeat, something like respect softened the predator. "We will." Nyxel leaned against a wall, wings folded, expression lighter than it had been in days. "Careful. If you tell a pack of shifters to earn you, they will treat it like a holy war." Oryx appeared behind Nyxel with a grin. "I already drafted the ceremony. It involves a lot of dramatic lighting and absolutely no cages." Kaler's voice was dry. "If you try to stage a ceremony, I will personally throw you into a training pit." Oryx placed a hand over his heart. "Violence. From the strategist, I am moved." Despite herself, Vaelis smiled, small and real. Then the smile trembled, because her body remembered the feel of Thyren's hand on hers, the shock of contact in the middle of a portal. Thyren's gaze dropped briefly to her palm, then back to her eyes. "Your hand, does it hurt?" "It burns," Vaelis admitted. Thyren's voice softened. "May I?" He did not reach, he asked. Vaelis' throat tightened. She nodded once. Thyren stepped closer slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. He lifted his hand and gently took hers, careful of the cut, his thumb hovering, not pressing into the mark. His touch was warm and steady, and it sent a shiver through Vaelis that was not just pain or relief. It was intimacy without claim. Her breath caught. Thyren's voice was low. "No mark, no bond, only contact, only comfort. Tell me if you want me to stop." Vaelis' eyes stung. "Do not stop." Thyren's fingers tightened slightly, grounding her. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, not her palm, not the mark, a gesture so restrained it felt like worship and discipline braided together. Vaelis' chest ached. "I wanted to save you," Thyren whispered. "And I hated myself for how much my instinct wanted to claim you on that stage. I hate that part of me. I fight it every day. Vaelis swallowed. I hate that part of me too, the part that wants to be held so badly it feels like surrender. Thyren's eyes held hers. It is not surrender if you choose it. Vaelis stared at him, heart pounding. She had been trained to think need was weakness. But perhaps need, named honestly, could be power. She stepped closer, until the space between them was thin as breath. She did not press into him fully. She simply let her forehead rest against his chest for a heartbeat, listening to his heart, the proof of a living body that had come after her into a vault. Thyren's hands hovered, then settled lightly at her shoulders, not pulling, not trapping, just holding. Vaelis closed her eyes. In the distance, Noctharrow raged with scandal and consequence. Houses fell into panic. Courts scrambled. Buyers tried to erase their names and found the names already burned into public memory. Freed shifters staggered back into themselves, angry and alive. A new story began to spread, whispered first, then spoken louder. Omegas are not keys. Weeks later, Vaelis stood in the Enclave's main court as the first rescued Omegas arrived, wide-eyed, bruised, suspicious, expecting cages and finding open doors. Thyren greeted them with calm hands and clear rules. Myrth stood watch, terrifying in the way a guard dog is terrifying, the promise that predators would not cross this threshold. Nyxel set ward lights that did not flicker like fear. Kaler built barriers that faced outward, not inward. Oryx annoyingly made a banner. Vaelis stared at it, incredulous. You cannot hang that. Oryx's grin was wicked. It says sanctuary, people like words. It also has my name on it, Vaelis hissed. Yes, Oryx said, voice softer. Because you stopped hiding. The city needs a name to attach courage to, or it will pretend courage does not exist. Vaelis's chest tightened. She hated being a symbol. She also understood the power of it. Thyren approached, stopping at her side. We can remove it. Vaelis looked at the banner again, then at the frightened Omegas stepping through the gate. She shook her head. No, let it stand. Thyren's gaze softened. Are you sure? Vaelis's palm throbbed, the crescent scar a quiet reminder of a door sealed by choice. I am sure, she said. Later, in the quiet of her room, Vaelis sat at the edge of the bed, staring at her hand. The mark was fading slowly into a pale, jagged line, no longer a brand, no longer a leash, more like a healed wound that still remembered. Thyren knocked softly and waited. Come in, Vaelis said. He entered and stopped, as always, giving her space. The council drafted the new code, he said. It will be offered to the city courts. It is not law yet, but it is a start. Vaelis's throat tightened. What does it say? Thyren's voice was steady. Consent is binding. Contracts without consent are void. Marks without consent are assault. Omegas are not property, not keys, not doors. Vaelis exhaled shakily. They will fight it, Thyren nodded. Yes, Vaelis looked up at him. And you? Thyren's gaze held hers. I will fight too. Vaelis's heart hammered. She stood, crossing the room slowly until she was within reach. She lifted her hands and rested them lightly on his chest, feeling the heat of him through fabric. Thyren went still, breath caught, eyes searching her face for any sign of doubt. Vaelis swallowed. You said you would not touch without consent. Yes, Thyren whispered. Vaelis's voice shook, but it did not break. Then hear mine. You may hold me tonight, not as a claim, as a choice. Thyren's eyes flashed with emotion so intense it scared her. Say stop and I stop, he said. Vaelis nodded. I will. Thyren's arms slid around her slowly, careful, warm, and Vaelis let herself sink into the embrace. The sensation was almost painful, how much she needed it, how long she had starved for touch that did not demand a price. She pressed her cheek to his shoulder and breathed him in, cold and clean like snow on stone, and beneath it something human. Something that had learned restraint as a form of love. Thyren's voice was low, near her ear. You are safe. Vaelis closed her eyes. I am free, she corrected. Thyren held her tighter, just a fraction. Yes. Outside, Noctharrow kept being Noctharrow, a city that would always try to buy what it wanted. But tonight, a vault was sealed. A crown was ash. A network was exposed. Packs were waking up with their will return to them. And an Omega, once hunted as a key, chose her life with her own voice.